A pair of entitled boomers insult my girlfriend by making fun of her tattoos, causing my girlfriend to cry as we're leaving the restaurant we were eating at. But instead of putting up with that, I decided to go back and give these idiots a piece of my mind, shutting them down right then and there, and proving once and for all that no, they can't treat people like that and expect to get away with it. Here's what happened. Okay, this just happened a couple of hours ago, and I'm honestly still in disbelief. My girlfriend and I were at a seafood restaurant with long booths and tables close together. She has a lot of visible tattoos on both arms, and all of them are really professionally done. There was an older couple sitting next to us, and I politely nodded when we sat down, and they nodded back. And the couple was probably in their late 60s. We finished our meal, and I went back to the counter to get a to-go box. As I walked back to our table to get our stuff, my girlfriend stormed out of the restaurant, clearly fuming about something. Now, I was just confused, so I joined her outside, and I asked her what happened. She then told me that the man looked over at her, and then said to his wife, "I'm really glad that we don't have those. They look terrible." And the wife nodded in agreement. I almost questioned if she heard it right because it seemed so outlandish, but I knew for a fact she would not have reacted that way for no reason. She was almost tearing up as we drove home, and we only lived like maybe 1 to 2 minutes from the restaurant. When we got home, I had fully processed what happened, so I told her to just go inside, and I turned around and went right back to the restaurant. The couple was still sitting there finishing their food. I walked in and I stared at them, and then I walked back outside and I waited. As they walked out the door, they kind of nodded at me again, and I'd said something like, "Excuse me, were you two having a conversation about my girlfriend's tattoos while she was standing there?" Now, I just knew they would deny it, but no, the old man said, "Yeah, I told my wife that I'm glad you don't have tattoos like that. They look terrible." Now, I'm never confrontational, but at this moment, I lost it. I said some truly heinous crap to them. I told them to go F themselves, and that it's none of their business what her tattoos look like. They started walking away, but I just kept going. I then told them that the Grim Reaper's coming for them soon. I called his wife a fat jerk, and I told her to keep waddling away. He pulled the free speech card, and I told him to enjoy that free speech for the last few miserable years of his life. I just kept reminding them that they were going to pass away soon as they got into their car. Now, I never yelled, but I made sure they realized they can't be crappy, judgmental people without being called out. I know I went too far with my words, but I have zero regrets. I still can't believe it happened or that I confronted them about it, because these people really think they can say whatever they want, and honestly, screw that. I refuse to put up with that ever again. Oh man, good for you, dude. That's absolutely amazing. Yeah, I can understand you feeling bad about snapping at these people, but these people probably say crappy stuff like that out loud all the time, and right to people's faces probably constantly. So the fact that you bounced it right back at them was probably a shock to the system. So seriously, good for you for shutting them down, because these people absolutely deserved it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My fiance is constantly making fun of me because of my weight, and literally only proposed to me so that I would lose weight in time for our marriage. So now, after all the countless problems he's caused for me, I've decided to give him back the ring and even reconsider our relationship, putting me in a corner that honestly I never thought I would be put into. Here's what's going on. So my fiance and I have been together for a little more than 3 years now. Now, things weren't always good, but we tried to fix them and changed a lot. For context, he has enormous image issues and used to make fun of me to try and get a laugh. For example, he would make fun of my accent, my clothing style, my body weight, I mean pretty much anything when we were together. But in public, everything was completely fine. Now, I was at fault too because I am 3 years younger than him, but I've also changed a lot. I used to shout a lot in public spaces, was always on my phone, made fun of him in public for retaliation, etc. But all of these things I've changed completely. I had told him a couple of times that if he continued with a bad humor, I would end up detached and not really want to be talking to him. I mean, why talk to someone that only makes you feel like an idiot or makes fun of you? And he did change for a while, and stuff was heading in a normal direction. Well, a month ago, we put down our accounts and plans for the future, and he proposed to me, and I said yes, and we began gathering money for a house. Now, when it comes to me, I am rather principled, but the only thing I have troubles with is my weight. I used to work out a lot, and I was around 85 kilograms when I met him. Unfortunately, after stressful 12-hour shift days in a sketchy company for a year, and an ACL surgery in the second year that made me quit the working out thing, I gained a lot of weight, and I think I weighed at around 122 kilograms at my maximum weight gain. He discussed concerns about my health, even though all my tests came back fine, which is after the doctors told me to lose some weight. He then started measuring my sugar levels, and would steal snacks from my hands, and highlighted the fact that they weren't healthy and was bad for me, and would say that I was losing my goal and that he wanted to fix it by highlighting the bad stuff. There were nights that he pissed me off so much that I went to bed without food, and he would feel really bad, and he would not eat as well just to try and make it fair for the both of us. But then the humiliation started again. I couldn't talk about about anything. I would try to talk about the news or something interesting, and he would just say something like, since when do you read the news? Or I would doll up and wear my Crocs that have some fake gold butterflies in them as charms, and he would say to me, I'm not taking you out wearing these tacky butterfly Crocs. Take the butterflies out or put something else on. And it would be stuff like that. And when I would be sad about it, we would play it out as fun. And he would say to me, if I can't mess with you and make fun of you, then who will? And he was constantly doing that to me. Well, yesterday was my breaking point. My week was chaotic and I was really stressed out and I wanted a change, so I went and braided my hair. And I added in some fake white hair that I braided in. And I also added some gold loops because I found it funky and I just thought it was cool. But when I went to him to ask if he likes it, the first thing out of his mouth was to say to me, I bet you only like the gold loops because they're so tacky. There's no way the stylist put it there by herself. Now, I was so hurt by this. I clamped my mouth shut and my eyes watered. His face fell and tried to gently hold me and told me that he was making fun of me and that it was just humor. But I didn't say anything and I just got in the car. He had also gotten a haircut and asked me if I liked it, and I told him it was hideous. And yeah, it was petty of me, I know. But when I said that, he went full berserk mode. I told him that I only said this so he sees how he made me feel earlier. But this just started an entirely new argument. He claimed that I was really detached from him since last year, and I didn't talk much or continue any meaningful conversations. And he was actually fearing if my depression was coming back. And for reference, I was like this after my ACL surgery, and I worked it out with a therapist. So I told him to give me a couple of days to figure out why, because I've also noticed it around him. I went out with my best friends and I told them about the situation, and they told me I was fine with them, and they didn't see anything abnormal about me, and that they didn't think my depression was back. So I thought about it, and I figured out with myself that it was because he was humiliating me. When I wanted to talk to him, I always thought first that he was going to make fun of me, and I was just completely detached. So I went to talk to him and I told him about it, that I thought it was with him because he always makes fun of me, and I can't even be myself around him due to his image issues. That I talked about it with my girlfriends and they said I was fine. And when I said this, he went berserk again and started shouting at me about trust, all because I had talked about what he had told me with my friends, and that these issues are for us to solve and not for a third person. I backed up my girlfriends and I told him that's how girls work. We talk about stuff and we try to be better. He then told me that he would try to change since it was that, and I agreed to try and talk again, even with my fear of humiliation hanging because I wanted to work it with him. He also said that for him to change, he wanted me to be more principled with myself and to change as well, that I still hadn't lost the weight I wanted, and that he didn't want to give me an engagement ring if I had not fixed that. That way I could also be principled with our future children. He claims that an individual who is principled with himself can be a good example for kids, but he gave it to me anyways because he saw I wanted one and was looking at them, and he just had faith that I would change, and I just simply didn't. Meanwhile, I started going back to the gym and I managed to drop to 115 kilograms, but at my own pace. I'm not the type of woman who likes to miss meals or stuff like that. Like, I'm still gonna eat junk food when I want to, and then I'll hit the gym to try and counteract it. And I explained to him that my weight loss journey is mine and mine only, and I will do whatever I want with it, and I will lose the pound when I want to. In fact, I told him lately that I had actually lost 2 kilograms due to me sticking to my diet for us, so that we can have kids and have a house when we're ready. But when I said this, he just coldly told me that he's not ready for children. Well, the fury inside of me I felt was completely insufferable. I told him that I had asked him 3 times before accepting the ring if he is sure that it's me he wants through my ups and downs. But then he said that he didn't mind my weight, he just wanted me to be healthy. He said that he likes that I'm curvy, and since I'm healthy, everything's gonna be fine. He told me he said that in order for me to lose more for my own good, and in the heat of the argument, he told me that he didn't like my fat hanging out, and that he had tried to be good and also used bad words to make me understand that, and that I was in my own world just not listening. He also said I was gonna be dead at 40, and that my kids, if we have any, would be crying over it. He also said that if I fell down, it would take 3 people to get me back up. Now, when he said all this, I froze calmly and I took the engagement ring off and I just gave it back to him. The argument slowed down and his eyes went wide. I told him to see a therapist and that when I look in the mirror, I see a successful 25-year-old. I have a good heart, I've got great looks, and I've got a stable job. I see a warrior that fought through depression and a bad household, but despite that, I stuck to my values. I have a great support system and I don't need him. I can find other dudes if I want, and I have plenty after me. I said that I'm sick of him stealing my joy because of his misery, and that he can find someone thinner to be with and more to his character to parade around, since his image is a bigger priority than our relationship and my looks just completely humiliate him. Well, he then apologized and told me to seek out marriage counseling because he wants us to work out, and he agreed to therapy himself, but I told him he's a clown and to go for someone else, and that I would not be exposed to his idiotic ways to a third person, that I am done because he is a piece of garbage that just proposes proposed to me to lose weight and wanted a better, thinner version of me, but not me for who I am. He tried to give me my ring back and told me it was mine, that he loved me and just didn't want me to die and leave him because he would be heartbroken, that he never wanted to steal my spirit, and that he will let me wear what I want and that he will change. Well, I dropped the ring on the car seat and I told him I thought this ring was a sham and that this is not a token of our love, that it's lost value and I just don't want it anymore. I then closed the door and I left him behind. Now, we haven't broken up yet officially because I really just want to think about it, and in the meantime, I've talked with my family about it and I've just been ignoring his messages. Today, though, I answered that I want some time to think it over just to see if I want to continue this relationship. Well, ever since then, he's been bombarding me with calls, and my own family is telling me that I overreacted, saying that they see he loves me and that he wants a better future for me, and that if he minded my weight, then he would have just broke up with me and left it at that. He just doesn't have a good way of showing it, and that I should be patient when he learns. They even said that I did a bad thing and that I shouldn't have given the ring back. So now, with all things considered, I feel really guilty and torn, and I don't know if I overreacted and probably ruined my engagement. What should I do? Okay, this is just my opinion, but the fact that this guy is trying to be like, oh yeah, I only got engaged to you because you're fat and I want you to lose weight is insane in my opinion. That is a crazy precedent to set. Also, the jokes and the making fun of you and all the other stuff on top of that, like, I gotta be honest, to the original poster, this does not sound like a good person. This does not sound like a healthy partner or anybody who cares about you in the slightest. Seriously, this is some messed up stuff. And the fact that he's trying to spin this into like, oh baby, you don't understand. I'm so sorry for the things I did for the 12th time. I'm gonna change this time though, I swear. Like, that just seems completely dishonest and so manipulative. And it's crazy to me that your family's also turning on you about this. Like, you would think they would be supportive and be like, oh yeah, this guy's a piece of crap. Because I can confidently say, yeah, this guy's a piece of crap. It doesn't sound like he cares about you. It really just doesn't seem like he gives a flying crap about your well-being. And instead, he wants to make fun of your weight and all this other crap. So no, you're not overreacting by giving the ring back, because in my opinion, you can find a much better partner than this. Because based on what you've described, this guy does not sound like a good person in the slightest. An entitled Karen thinks that she can ignore the check-in rules as she literally tries to rush everybody onto the plane, all because she's sick of waiting. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened on my return flight from last year. We were waiting at the check-in counter when we were told that all families with children should go to the front so that they can get checked in first. The idea behind this was so that the children could all sit with their parents in the same area. That way they could all just stay together entirely. And honestly, I don't think that's a bad idea actually. And this really should be done more often on other airlines. So the other passengers let the families with children go to the front and everything is going smoothly. Well, at least until a woman behind us starts staring at my partner's back and gesticulating wildly every time she feels that my partner is vaguely looking in her direction. This goes on for a few minutes until she finally stomps to the front and starts talking to my partner. Go to the front right now, otherwise we'll be waiting here forever. My partner then calmly explains to her that families with children go first, and not everyone has checked in yet. She stomps back to her place in the row for exactly 2 minutes. Then she comes back to the front, taps my partner rather rudely on the shoulder, and says, "Are you finally going to the front? I don't want to wait here forever." At that point, I couldn't help but laugh, and I said to her, "I'm pretty sure that the last row of the plane will arrive in Vienna at the same time as the others, so calm down and just wait until it's your turn." Well, I've never seen anyone so surprised by my retort. When the guy behind me said that he didn't think this airport was so great and that you had to see everything here, the old bag finally shut up. I mean, did she finally realize that she would have to spend the entire flight between screaming children if she had gotten her way? Because maybe we should have just granted her wish and let her go ahead. That's the kind of suffering she definitely deserves to deal with. Yeah, honestly, I can't stand when people are really impatient about getting on the plane. Because guess what, Karen? It's not going to start until all of us are on the plane. You rushing to get to the front and sit there is not going to make anything go faster. So yeah, I love the way you guys handle this because this lady definitely needed to be shut down. My job demands that I use the company car for any work-related outings. But unfortunately, this backfired in a way that literally left me stranded, forcing my manager to come to grips with this stupid rule. Here's what happened. Okay, so I used to work for a small regional sales company where part of my job involved visiting clients across the state. I had my own reliable car, I kept it in great condition, and I always preferred using it for work trips. It was more comfortable, it had better mileage, plus I knew it inside and out. Well, one day the new manager came in with a bunch of new rules. One of them being that all employees must use the company car for any work-related travel, no exceptions. I explained that I preferred my car, and I even offered to waive mileage reimbursement, but no, policy is policy. So the next time I traveled for work, I grabbed the keys for the company car, which is a crusty old Ford Focus with 170,000 miles, literally held together by zip ties and corporate optimism. It barely had any steady AC, the brakes squealed like a banshee, and it reeked of stale coffee and despair. About an hour into my 3-hour drive to a client, I hear a loud clunk. Then there's smoke, and then the car just dies on me. Literally on a remote highway too at that, with no signal. I end up walking nearly 2 miles to get to a bar of service, and I call it in for a tow. Now, the client meeting was obviously missed, and the company had to reschedule, reimburse the client for the inconvenience, and cover the tow and the repairs. And trust me, the manager wasn't pleased. I then reminded him that I had offered to take my own car because I trusted it. Well, after that, the mandatory company car rule got quietly retired, and I never had to hear about it ever again. Oh man, you handled this way better than I did, dude. I would be super pissed off at my company if that happened to me. Like, I would be destroying their inboxes with complaints and all kinds of grievances, dude. Like, seriously, you got stuck in the middle of nowhere on a remote highway, forcing you to walk 2 miles to get reception, dude. Like, there's no way I would be okay with that. I would be so pissed off, because this is literally not your fault. Am I the jerk for embarrassing my more fit coworker by literally just being stronger than him? Because right now he's very embarrassed and is currently saying that I'm intentionally humiliating him, despite the fact that I most definitely am not. Here's what's going on. So I'm a 25-year-old camp counselor who also works with elementary school boys. To give some context, I'm an incredibly short and fat man. Like, I'm under 5 feet tall and around 200 pounds. This does not affect my ability to do my job. I'm just as active with any other counselor, and I work with the kids just as much. I also have to get blood tests done for different reasons, and there's never really any concern when it comes to my cholesterol or insulin level or anything weight related. And I'm just saying this so you have some context for my general appearance and the fact that no, my weight doesn't affect my health or my level of activity. Now, my co-counselor is a guy around my age who is, I think, a baseball player, and we could not look more different. He's got more than a foot of height on me and probably about the same weight, so he's obviously more visibly fit. He brags a lot about how even after we spend all day chasing kids in the sun, he still gets to go to the gym for a couple of hours. Well, the issue is when it comes to actually having to use strength practically, I outdo him every single time. I'm not trying to do it intentionally, but when we have to carry 20 kids' backpacks and he can only handle 8 while I have 12, or when he can't open a jar, or when we have to lug heavy equipment and he's huffing and puffing while I'm not even having a problem, it becomes pretty evident that I'm just stronger than him, at least for stuff like that. I'm sure he could outbench me or whatever proper fitness stuff is, and trust me, he crushes me when we play sports with the kids. I'm talking more specifically about that kind of work. The issue is that the kids have started to pick up on the fact that I am the strong counselor. If they want to be picked up, or they can't open something in their lunch, or they just want to break from carrying their bags on a hike, they come to me. And apparently my co-counselor complained to one of the other counselors that I'm allegedly embarrassing him because a guy like me shouldn't be able to be stronger than him. That counselor then came to me and told me I should tone it down because it can be hard for someone who prides themselves on being an athlete to be worse at something than a guy like me. But I straight up told him there's no way I'm gonna do my job worse just to protect his hit ego. And when I said that, the other counselor said I was being a jerk and that as the summer goes on, the boys might start bullying my other co-counselor if they think he's weaker than me, which I don't think is gonna happen, but I'm not sure either way. So am I the jerk for not wanting to stop doing my job the way I'm doing it, just so I don't hurt this other guy's feelings? Because right now I'm honestly at a loss and I don't know what to do. Okay, this is some insane fragile ego crap, and in my opinion, you should absolutely double down, dude. Like, this guy is seriously so insecure it's not even funny. Because if I was in your shoes and this guy literally said that to me, you know, through another coworker by the way, I would go out of my way to start doing more. We're talking carrying way more than this guy, making it very apparent that he's weaker than you. Like, literally, there's no way I would ever go the opposite direction. So no, you're not the jerk, and you are definitely not embarrassing him. He is literally doing that himself. An entitled Karen says that she won't be paying for any damage to my car after her son dents my bumper after backing out of a parking lot, saying that even if I call the police, it won't work because apparently she is the police. But karma comes back to bite her right in the rear end, as I quickly realize that her husband is actually the superior officer at the police station, as this Karen literally humiliates her entire family, all because of a minor accident that easily could have been fixed. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened to me once and I've never forgotten it. I was parked outside my work, and when I returned to my car one evening, there was a note on my windshield. It read that they were very sorry and that they had accidentally dented my car when leaving their space, and with that, they left their number plate name and their phone number. Now, of course, accidents happen, so after looking at the damage, I rang the number and I politely explained to the young man that I would take the car to a garage and get a quote for repairs, no problem. He was very nice about it, but said he didn't have much money, so I told him to let me see how much it's going to be and then I would get back to him. Now, he must have then gone and told his mom about what had happened, because I get a call the very next day from an irate woman explaining to me that it's my problem and her son wouldn't be paying for any damage. Now, I explained that I'm very reasonable and I'm fair, but she talked over me and just bluntly refused. So she literally left me no choice. I told her I would be going to the police to report the situation, to which she shouted back by saying, well, good luck with that. We are the police. And then she hung up on me. So I did exactly as I said. I attended the local police station and they sat me down in a room so that they could take the details. I gave them the number plate information and I said what the mom had threatened. It was then that the two police officers looked at each other and they said, oh man, that's our superior's car. So long story short, it was the guy in charge of the station's car, and this was his wife and son. He then called me personally to apologize and even offered me payment. And I can only imagine how extremely embarrassed he must have been because his wife was acting incredibly insane. Dude, that is super embarrassing. Imagine being like, oh, we're not paying for anything. We are the police. Only to them be like, oh yeah, I kind of wish I had not said that. Because that seriously just embarrassed pretty much everybody in the family. Especially for the cop who works there, dude. Like, why would you do that? That is such a weird level of entitlement. Like, seriously. So good for you for reporting him either way because these people absolutely deserved it.
Am I the jerk for calling my husband delusional for demanding I give him half the profit of my business that he didn't support in the first place? My husband, 35-year-old male, is a bank clerk. And I, 29, have a working from home job which I can hardly bear since I'm an active outdoor person and I like doing gardening stuff in particular. I figured since I have a background in gardening, I'd use our spacious backyard to grow flowers and sell them online, after arranging and organizing them into bouquets. When I brought this up with my husband, he said this was the worst idea ever, and added that this would be a major waste of time and money and suggested I look for a second job instead. I didn't listen and started my business little by little. In a matter of 18 months, it started bringing in decent money, and I gained customers. My husband offered to look at how much I was able to make in the past months and was pretty impressed. The other day, he was standing with his drink while I was checking my flowers. He talked about what a good job I was doing keeping our business flowing. I corrected him about it being our business and reminded him about how little faith he had in my potential to make decent money out of growing, selling, and cutting flowers. He said, well, I honestly didn't think your little gardening hobby was going to get you anywhere. But now that business is flourishing, I want my fair share of the profit, and I won't settle for less than 50%. I was honestly completely caught off guard by what he said. He's shown zero interest in my business since it started up until this point. He in fact thought it was a waste of time and money. I was puzzled and asked why he thought he should get any share of profit, let alone 50%. His answer was that I was using his soil to grow my flowers on. I said that this was our house and our soil, not just his, since we're married and both our names are on the title. He said, actually, I owned this house long before you came along, so it's technically mine. I replied that he must be aware it'll be split in half in case of separation. He laughed and joked about how silly I was for hinting at separation just because he was asking for something that he so richly deserved, which is 50% of the profit. I said no and that he was delusional to ask, because even his soil alone doesn't magically grow my flowers. There's a lot of work to it, from picking, buying seeds, taking time, effort to care for them, collecting, trimming, and selling them while all he does is sit back. I'd argue that since things took off with the business, that quite frankly I've been spending more than him on necessities lately. But I still pour money back into the garden to be able to keep the business steady, with all the requirements that need to be met. I said it didn't matter to him when I started using his soil, so why now? He said it always matters when money is involved. We had an argument about it and he apologized, but only for approaching the subject so rudely, and still wants 50%. It's not like he needs the money for something urgent. In fact, he has more than enough. He's been silent about it after stating that he already said what he needed to say, and I needed to make the right decision. Am I the jerk? To clarify, my husband and I have both got our own salaries. We contribute equally towards expenses. It's his idea since he had a divorce before me. He still has things that he owns alone, which isn't bad since money has never been an issue. It's not like he needs money for an emergency or something, he just wants 50% of the profit going forward. This is a bit bloody weird if you ask me. If he's been benefiting from the business and the beautification of the property that you both live on, that he was presumably doing nothing with before, why would he want more? I'm going to make a wild guess that he isn't somehow a medieval baron and you don't live on an exorbitant taxation system of land rents with him. If this becomes your main source of income, the same way that, his job is, I just don't understand how he can justify the idea that the main thing you work at to support yourself could in any way be his. Do you take a literal half of his income? Maybe go through and look at your total expenses, and if your business ever starts putting you in the red, you can generously agree to his kind offer. Then see how long his resolution to be part owner lasts. I hope that this isn't so much a jerk situation as one that can be worked out with some talking and conflict resolution. Really, the husband in this story just comes across as kind of greedy. Otherwise, it seems like you've come to the right conclusion that if he keeps pressing the point, that you might be better off with a partner who has an appreciation of finances, relationships, and flowers. Am I the jerk for refusing to eat from my colleague's vegan birthday cake? I'm working in an office and I have a colleague, B, who routinely makes fun of vegans. I'm vegan and I never make a fuss about food. I go to the same restaurants as my coworkers during lunch hour, and I can always find myself something to eat without announcing my dietary choices. B keeps calling me out on it though, and she's very condescending about it. She keeps saying I'm just having a phase, and she keeps offering me bites of her lunch that contain cheese and meat, and when I refuse, she just goes, "Oh come on, it's vegan, I promise." Wink wink. It's very childish and annoying, and even other people ask her to tone it down, but she insists she's just joking. Last week she brought a homemade cake to the office for her birthday, and when she put a slice down in front of me, I politely thanked her for it, but said I can't eat it. She said the cake is vegan and she made it specifically so I could eat it. But knowing her very loose definition of vegan, I asked a few questions about the ingredients and she didn't check any of them for milk or eggs, so I thanked her again but refused the slice. She made a big scene out of it. She started crying and saying she just wanted to do something nice for me, and now I ruined her birthday. Some colleagues told me not to mind her dramatics, but my boss told me that it was her birthday and I could have just given her cooking the benefit of the doubt. I sort of see his point, but I also feel like I don't need to justify my food choices to anyone, and I never asked her to make the cake vegan for me. Am I the jerk? Okay, is the narrator out of touch or completely justified in asking, what kind of flipping adult cares this much about their birthday at their workplace? At just about any workplace I've ever had, if nobody knew or acknowledged that I'd aged a year, I can't for the life of me imagine why I would care. You save that stuff for after work. Have a party, have a dinner, go out. Unless your workplace is your only social life, and to be honest, if that's the case, what's wrong with you? Why would it be that emotionally damaging that someone can't eat your birthday cake? Honestly, in my greedy brain, that's a massive plus. More cake for me. Honestly, it sounds like not only is the author not the jerk here, but that B might be kind of a jerk in general. I know that not all places are accepting of vegetarians and vegans, but this was written in 2020, and come on. We all know they exist, we have done for years. This can't be something that baffles you, B. And all your office mates clearly think you're being dramatic. Stop being dumb, stop being dramatic, and stop being a child who throws a tantrum because it's their birthday. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today I messed up by reviewing a lawn service. This is a relatively small mess up, but I cringed so hard after realizing what I did, I wanted to share it with you all. I have a small house in the middle of the block. The neighbors to my left have kids and are working from home, so they don't do much yard work. Neighbors to the right moved out and the landlord hasn't taken care of the backyard in months. I'm suffering from post-COVID fatigue and can barely bring myself to mow my lawn, let alone try my hand at the dozens of scrub trees and weeds, some of which are taller than my garage, and are encroaching upon my yard from all sides. The back fence had become tangled in a thick foot of vines, and I also have a Chinese wisteria that had grown out of control. It was starting to grow onto all the fence-lined trees and the neighbor's garage. I needed help. I found a great service on Google for my area. Wonderful prices. The crew came out and got to work. They tore through my backyard like a tree-trimming tornado. They cut back the wisteria beautifully. I was very impressed. I paid the crew, gave them a huge tip, and I wanted to let the boss know the great work they'd done. So I wrote up a little Google review. Their services are highly recommended. Thorough, fast, and clean. Reasonable prices. Shout out to Steve on an amazing trim job. I didn't notice anything wrong until the owner texted me and thanked me for the review before asking me to please edit it. I said, sure, why? He just said, lol, you'll see. I reread it and facepalmed. I'd left out the T on trim job. In short, I thanked a tree trimming service in a Google review with a special shout out to an employee for being a wonderful and professional individual while he bent down and put his tongue in my butt. You know, I bet that guy got some amazing flack from his colleagues after that. I wonder if he even came out of it with a nickname. So you're definitely not a jerk by any stretch of the imagination, but in this case you may be described as the culprit of both your own and poor Steve's misfortune. Although, let's be honest, the whole incident is just objectively funny, and I'm sure eventually both of you will be able to laugh at it for a long time to come. Thank you to Steve and the customer with bad autocorrect or a filthy Freudian slipping mind for your services. Especially Steve. What you do takes grit, professionalism, and a willingness to get down and dirty that most people just don't possess. You can come down to my house and trim my unsightly hedge anytime. Oh, you're telling me to exercise? Well, you should too. So my husband and I got married a year and a half ago, and when we got married I noticed that at that point I'd gained roughly about 15 pounds. Nothing crazy, just adding some hardly noticeable pudge around my tummy area. I didn't think too much of it. Now, I would jokingly, and he knows I'm joking, say that I'm gaining weight because I married him. I know that's not the case. The true culprit is a mix of cooking lots of yummy foods together, since we both love cooking and trying new stuff, and me switching to a new birth control. Anyway, 6 months in, I'm changing into a tank top and some old shorts to do some gardening. And these shorts, which used to fit me like a glove, now barely zipper up and leave me with a tiny little muffin top. Naturally, I pout at the realization, turn to my husband and show him. He gets a deer-in-the-headlights look as he realizes my dilemma, as his brain struggles to think of the least offensive response. He says, maybe you should work out? We both had a good chuckle at that, and it did motivate me to put some more effort in. I haven't dropped the weight, but I haven't gained any more, and I'm good with my body image. But last night came my revenge. Hubby comes out of our walk-in closet with an armload of pants and throws them on the bed. I'm the one who sorts and collects things for donation. He was giving them to me to determine if they were fine and just needed a wash before donating, or if they were too far gone and were meant for the trash. He said, these don't fit. I asked, how? Are they too short? They're too tight around the waist. I held onto them to see if they'd fit again, but they still don't, so... A grin broke out across my face as I looked up at him from my computer. Maybe you should work out. He looked at me for a second, and then he remembered, tried not to smile, and muttered a snickering, "Oh my God," as he rolled his eyes and left me to deal with the pence. I made sure to give him half my cheesecake slice later. Oh, come on, nobody is the jerk here, this is just cute. Mr. Husband here was caught in a cousin of the old, do I look fat in this situation, and panicked. Seems like the author took this in good humor and honestly has a much healthier approach to her body than just about anyone else I know. So good on them. And she got to turn the tables on him later, and they both enjoyed their comfort food and presumably kept right on going with the foods they like to eat. Wins all around, no villains, just two heroes. May we all find a relationship this chill. Months of paid vacation? I'll take it. This happened in Germany, so the laws are different to other countries, especially to the USA. The workers' protection laws in Germany are pretty good compared to the US. We Germans are allowed to work for more than 60 hours a week, but just for a short period of time in emergency situations. And people under the age of 18 aren't allowed to work for more than 8 hours per day and 5 days per week. There are some exceptions for people that do an apprenticeship as a baker or a cook and similar jobs, but that's it. I was working for a family-owned business, about 40 employees, a couple of years ago. My time there wasn't the best because I had huge problems with my boss's younger brother. He was on early pension and officially just working on a small part-time contract, while in reality working full-time and getting most of his salary out of pocket. That I was hired meant for him that he worked about half the hours he worked before, and having a huge pay cut because of me. It teed him off no end, as you can imagine. He talked crap about me behind my back all the time and tried to get me fired more than once. Dealing with him was a pain in the butt, but I didn't have to deal with him too often, and my coworkers were nice and the pay was good. So I didn't worry about finding another job despite my relationship with my boss and his wife getting worse over time too. My boss even came to me with 2 deliveries to customers because his brother probably told him I'd waste time during the deliveries. One day, I had to do a delivery with my boss's wife's car because the company car that I normally use was at an inspection that day and the timing couldn't have been worse. I scratched the fender of her car on a wall when I tried to get out of the parking spot. The scratches were barely noticeable, but I immediately reported it to one of my coworkers so no one can say that I tried to put it under the rug. I did the delivery, and when I came back, my boss's wife was already waiting for me. She went completely ballistic, screamed at me for ruining her car without inspecting the damage before doing so, and said that she'll take the money for the repair out of my paycheck. She was incited by her brother-in-law. I don't know what he said to her in the 1.5 hours I was at our customers, and I also don't want to know. He was always talking crap about me behind my back for almost 3 years, and I can just guess what she was thinking at that moment. I told her that I won't pay for anything because the insurance will pay for it anyway, and that's what made her snap, and she slapped me in the face. I immediately turned around, grabbed my stuff, clocked out, and went to the doctor to get a sick note because of mental stress, which I threw into the company's mailbox in the evening. 2 days later, I got a termination letter in the mail and had to laugh while reading just the first sentence. We are terminating your work contract immediately, or, if this isn't applicable, within the legal 30 days. To people who aren't familiar with German workers' law, it's illegal to terminate a contract immediately and within the legal period of time in the same termination letter. You can do one or another, but not both at the same time. So I went to the government office to apply for unemployment and hired a lawyer to sue my boss for illegal termination. Over 2.5 months went by until I got a court date, and my boss was really annoyed when the judge explained to him that the termination was illegal and that he had to pay me for the last 2.5 months. But the illegal termination wasn't the only mistake he made. The judge gave me 2 options. I can accept an immediate termination on that day and leave without compensation, or I can have 2 months' salary compensation, but I have to work another month for the company. My boss laughed and said that I'm too scared to go back to work and that it makes him happy that I'd be leaving the court unemployed. He didn't look happy anymore when I asked him, "Why should I be scared? Do you want to beat me like your wife did?" So I took option B and went to work the next morning. My boss's brother was already waiting for me so he could hand me the termination letter and made comments about how difficult the next 30 days would be for me. I checked the termination letter, and after I've seen that everything was correct, I just said that I'm not feeling well, turned around and went to my doctor to get another 30-day sick note because of burnout. And yes, Germany is pretty great to be an employee in. We have almost unlimited sick leave, pretty good workers' protection laws, and in most cases, the other party has to pay for your lawyer and expenses when you win at court. So at the end, I had 3.5 months vacation with full pay, 2 months salary compensation, and he had to pay for my lawyer too because he lost at court. I could have sued my boss's wife for the slap too, but that would have been too much stress for maybe a couple of €100. She wouldn't have got into much trouble as a first-time offender, and I was just happy to get out of there with a good compensation. See, most of us who live outside the US look on some of the firing and employee mistreatment stories from there with horror and disgust, for good reason. This story here is a very good example as to why. A workplace in most other first-world countries has lots of checks and balances to keep us safe from awful people like the owners of this company. I honestly don't know what they were thinking or how they imagined they'd get away with it. Also, how does a presumably adult woman not understand that this car-scratching hiccup is really easily coverable? Having to take your car into a shop and fill out some forms is annoying, but not when the slaps should start flying in my books. Actually, that is the one thing that you could really exploit in the US of A. If an employer slapped you there, then you would really be set for a while. So yeah, the entire family running the business in question here are undoubtedly the villains, and they compound it by seemingly being completely clueless into the bargain. The author was very lucky that he found a doctor willing to sign off on a 1-month mental health leave. That is the part I'm most doubtful that most of us could swing. Well, win-win for him. No good deed goes unpunished. I run a gaming store, and one of the things our store does is give out free Pokemon cards. And let me tell you, when it comes to retail customers and free, you get the choosiest beggars. First of all, I want to clarify this is voluntary. The cards are not provided from our company, they're donated by the community. I've had mothers scream at me for not letting their kids take more than one. They leave bad reviews because we didn't have the Pokemon cards they wanted, and these free cards were all commons. The ones that floor me recently were these kids. I gave them the free cards and they looked at me and said, "We want free booster packs instead." It's moments like these that just make me want to give up on giving them away anymore. Yeah, this story is attracting a lot of comments saying that when you start some kind of store, you should never give away free stuff, which is a really sad sentiment because we shouldn't be so damn averse to generosity, but it seems to be an overwhelming piece of repeated advice here. I'm sorry, would sir or madam like a refund on the object that I gave you for free out of nothing more than wanting to help share some love of a hobby or simply out of the spirit of kindness? Also in the replies are quite a great crop of people who work for radio giveaways who maintain that people who win prizes are often some of the most ungrateful and picky jerks in the world. They'll apparently win a great second prize and then moan and gripe that they didn't get the first place one and try to obtain it out of sheer nerve. So yeah, I'm sure that there are graceful recipients of free stuff, but all well-off people who complain about their giveaways are absolute sacks of crap. Am I the jerk for not taking my brother's kids to Disneyland with me? Long backstory. My brother and I have had a strained relationship our whole lives. We came from a really bad home. Our mum was amazing, but we were all horribly treated by our dad, and she couldn't or wouldn't leave. Our relationship was strained because as things got worse in our home as kids, he'd find ways to throw me under the bus so that I was the focus of the anger instead of him. Once he was older, he'd get into it with our dad and then just leave, leaving me alone with him now that he was drunk and had been fighting with my brother and was riled up. Our mum just avoided coming home at all costs. The rest of the family sees me as the problem child. They were all somewhat aware of the stuff going on in our house, but were the "don't rock the boat and shame the family" type. They'd make fun of me about how I lied to CPS for attention when an investigation was opened when I was in the first grade, after I showed up to school with a pretty bad injury from where my brother tied a dog leash around my waist and I bungee jumped off a second-floor balcony. Looking back, our dad was likely wasted and not watching me and my brother when I was 6 and he was 11. When I was 17, I moved out of state and had very little contact with anyone outside my mum. My mum ended up being diagnosed with a metastatic chest cancer and fought really hard for 8 years. I'd fly in to visit her every few months as I could. I actually ended up married to a really horrible man with similar bullying habits to my father. He ended up having a heart attack and had to have a quadruple bypass. He was horrible to care for and just got more and more cruel. 3 months after his heart attack, my mum's health turned for the worst and she passed away. Our dad was horrible to us, going as far as to try to sue us for some money that she left us. After the funeral, my husband got more and more nasty and I took the money she had left me and filed for divorce. I know that Mum hated that I married my ex. I think she knew it was a reflection of the life we had with her. I think she'd be happy about how I spent the money. I decided I needed some me time, so I decided to go spend some time at Disneyland and visit family in the area. Honestly, a good part of the plan was to spend it at the local bars and restaurants that are all conveniently walking distance from the hotel. I got tickets for 3 of the days and would go to the park and then just kind of cruise around. My ex-husband was very controlling and I rarely got to leave the house without him aside from going to work and stuff, so I really just wanted to do whatever the frick I felt like. My brother told me I was stupid for getting a hotel and I should stay with him and his family. He has 2 girls, 5 and 8, that I've only met twice. I grew up in a very toxic family and I'm still learning how to be a mentally healthy human being, and I'm uncomfortable with kids because I don't want to mess up. I can deal with mistakes with adults, but I don't want to do something wrong with the kids and have no clue how to deal with them. That causes me a ton of stress and I don't want to be in that position. When I got there, I was shocked that he and his wife were planning to go to work and leave the kids with me. I am not good with kids. I don't dislike them, I'm just uncomfortable being responsible for them. The entire family knows this pretty well. I've been like that since I was a kid. I'm happily child-free. I told him I wasn't there just to be daycare for his kids. I hate to say this, but leaving me alone with a 5 and 8-year-old is just horrible judgment. I'm not mean or anything, but I'd have no clue what to do. I also don't know how they parent. Just that his wife is ultra particular about literally everything. So like, do I give them all candy? Is soda okay? What should they watch and how long do they watch it? I don't know what a baby shark is. He got upset because he'd already told our aunt she didn't need to watch them that week. I was irritated that he hadn't even asked me about this. I told him that I wasn't planning on being available to sit at his house watching his kids while they worked, and I reminded him that I was planning to spend a few days at the park, which is a few hours away. I may be bad with kids, but I know better than to even mention Disneyland around them. I have a hard time with boundaries and saying no, especially when I'm stressed and anxious. Shocking, I know. Do I buy them all the ice cream they demand? How do I keep an eye on two at once? What about the rides they're too young for? What about the two-person rides? Later that night, he tells me it's stupid to pay for a hotel by the park. I should just drive up for the day and then I can take the girls. Without missing a beat, he asks them if they want to go and spend the day with their aunt at Disneyland. The response is what you'd expect. I'll say in his defense that he likely would have paid for them. He's pretty proud about how his wife and him both have master's degrees and great careers, and likes to mention that I never went to college. I was absolutely stunned. I told them I had to go home and I couldn't go. I grabbed my stuff and drove up and found a hotel close to the park. I spent 4 days bouncing between parks, ordering room service, going to the pool, spa and bar, and a few times just drowned my sorrows alone in the hotel room. The whole drinking part was a big part of why I was so against bringing the kids. My ex also didn't like me to drink, so, I kinda just wanted to do that. My phone blew up with family who I haven't been close to in over a decade, telling me how awful I was and how much I'd upset the girls, my brother, and his wife. That they were all grieving too and I was being selfish. I've spent a lot of time in therapy. The family uses it as proof that I have issues. My brother is the normal one who doesn't see a therapist. Yep, part of me knows that they're toxic as all hell. The whole family dynamic is being threatened by anyone stepping out of line. I see them for what they are now, and their response is to attack. It's just hard because basically my mum died and I left my husband, and it just sucks because I'm alone in the world now. Like, if crap hits the fan, I have literally no one to turn to and no one in my corner, except a few cats. So, am I the jerk for not taking the kids with me? I feel fairly secure in saying that your brother, and honestly the rest of your family, all sound pretty terrible at the end of this. Your nieces aren't to blame, they're just kids who had the word Disneyland dangled in front of them, which you took very considerate steps to address. It honestly sounds like you, and yes, your brother, had a very rough time of it, and you should both be commended for getting out of it and making your own lives afterwards. But then for him to invite you under the pretense of familial care when it seems like he only wanted to use you as free babysitter without consulting you first leaves a bad taste in the narrator's mouth. It would have been different if he'd actually asked first. At the very least, it seems like he doesn't know you, from what you've said about how you feel with kids, and at worst, he knew and tried to take advantage of you anyway. And while we're at it, screw your extended family for having the nerve to criticize you after doing nothing about the way you were treated growing up. I understand that we only have the author's perspective on this, but it's very hard to see how the brother and extended family could justify their viewpoints. Can anyone else see why they might feel that way? If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by angering a sitting US congressman on Facebook, to the extent that he challenged me to fight him when he comes to my state of Alaska next year. I accepted before giving it any thought. This all started earlier tonight when I replied to one of his posts, calling him out for frequently lying, as so many politicians are wont to do, and capping it off by calling him a traitor. We then had a brief back and forth and he laid down the challenge. He wants us to go at it either in a ring or a dojo. I told him to message me before he gets here so we can actually make this happen. I'm not sure if I'm in over my head or not, but I'm not about to back down. I have a service-level amount of training from my time in the infantry and in law enforcement, but he has a similar background. While I highly doubt he'll follow through, I'd better start legitimately training just in case. Never in a million years did I think he'd respond, let alone challenge me to an actual fisticuffs like we're in the 1800s. But here we are. In short, I teed off a sitting US congressman enough that he challenged me to fight him in 2022, and I accepted. Oh wow, this got a lot of attention. Thanks for the encouragement, fellow Americans and random fellow humans from around the world. As usual, internet sleuths have figured it out. The congressman is Clay Higgins. Do your thing, internet. Maybe we can find a way to use this to raise money for charity even if he backs down. Not sure how to proceed, but I'm willing to train and make this happen for a good cause. Here's a quick update. I've had a couple of PR folks and trainers reach out to me and we'll see where all of this goes. Realistically, I suspect that Clay will continue to ignore all this, as numerous people mentioned that this is his modus operandi, and apparently this isn't his first time challenging people to fight on social media. But I'll train anyway, as it'll be fun and good for me. For those who are wondering, I was a Republican until around 2012, when I shifted left of center a bit and became an independent. I joined the Democratic Party in 2020. I do hope that someday the GOP shifts back towards more moderate, but I won't hold my breath. We really need more Adam Kinzingers in that party. Anyway, it's going to take days to read through the comments and reply to some, so bear with me and thanks for the support. First of all, Congressman Clay Higgins is both the jerk and just a jerk in general, and that's putting things mildly for YouTube. The narrator has done a bit of sleuthing himself, and it seems like, as many people in the replies to the story predicted, he never actually turned up for a fight. There are, however, numerous accounts of him making the same challenges over and over that seem to just trail into nothing. The author mentions that he's a former soldier and had started training, which makes me wish the encounter had actually happened, as people like Clay are usually about as much use in an actual fight as me, that is to say, hilariously worthless. At least some of us don't pretend otherwise. Although the author is unquestionably not the jerk, it was a bit naive of him to think that a politician would ever follow through on a promise that might negatively impact them. So we'll leave the mental images of a MAGA loudmouth being socked on the jaw to our wishful thinking, and accept that the many past and future challenges that Higgins makes are all complete bull. Telling my mum move when she's in my home is so delicious. When we were growing up, my mum would often stand in front of where we were sitting and say, "Move." This was meant to indicate that she wanted us to move so that she could sit where we were sitting. I always found this really disrespectful, and I remember making that argument to my mum when I was a kid. She told me that when I had my own house, I could tell her to move. So I do. Whenever there's a gathering of people at my home when my mum is there, I make a point of walking up to her where she's sitting and saying, "Move," so that other people notice. Of course, somebody usually comments or asks what I'm doing, and I'll playfully explain that this was a thing my mum used to do, and that she said I could do it to her when I brought my own house. So it's what I'm doing. Ha 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 ha. Isn't that hilarious? Aren't I cheeky? I make a joke out of it and everyone laughs. But my mum has to wear that crap-eating grin that was constantly plastered on my face growing up whenever my mum decided to insult me around other people and pretend it was a joke. Inside, I know she's absolutely livid, because it's literally the rudest thing I'm willing to do to another person. Oh my god. Cue the passive-aggressive war that will start to take place whenever you visit your mother at her home. Do I blame you? Absolutely not. Would I do it myself? Same answer. Absolutely not. I value my life. Then again, maybe you and I have different matriarchs in our lives. My mum never abuses her powers like the authors. I don't think you're a jerk, but I'd question whether it was time to let things like this go. Many of the people who replied to the story were ecstatic that the mum got a taste of her own medicine, so I might be in the minority who think it would be better to just forget the whole thing. Walk slowly so we can watch, baby. Years ago, I worked as a cocktail bartender and waitress. A group of suits came in and sat down, and I went to take their order. I got a bad vibe off them from the get-go, and after I finished the order and went to leave, this 30-something-year-old sleazy guy said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Walk away slowly, baby, so we can watch." I smiled at him and started to do an overdramatic, slow-motion back away, keeping eye contact with him and smiling the whole time. I told the other waiters about it, and everyone started doing these slow-motion walks whenever they walked past their table. The best one was a busboy who deliberately dropped something next to their table and then did a very slow and sexy pickup like the bend and snap from Legally Blonde. He did his absolute best to maintain eye contact too, and they were all doing their best to ignore him. They left pretty quickly after that. Classic hospitality resistance right there. Anyone who's ever worked in the industry knows that generally your boss doesn't care what your paying customers do to the staff in cases like this. So often, rallying everyone else to be passive-aggressive and weird to them is the best you can do, and it's generally a riot for us. Well done on driving these absolute jerks away. Double points to Busboy for taking the opportunity to shake what his mother gave him. Am I the jerk for telling a coworker that if I'm not allowed to wear makeup, then he should also not be allowed to keep his beard? 25-year-old female. I work at a law firm. Just for context, recently graduated, so right now I don't practice law, but I'm basically the receptionist of the office. So I see every single client that comes into the building. I also like wearing makeup. Not to the point of being completely unrecognizable, but I do like to wear a full face. My office has a very relaxed dress code. We literally have a goth assistant, and most of the people that work there are very nice. So the story you're about to hear was very weird, since there's no such requirement. We recently had a meeting to discuss the dress code of the office, since some of my coworkers are having issues adapting to the in-person modality. At the end, my boss asked if someone had any other concerns. My coworker, a 45-year-old man who asked me out when I first started dating, but I'm engaged and I'd never date someone like him, let's call him Mario, said something along the lines of, "I think makeup should be banned. People like Stacy look like a whole different person without it, and that misleads the client." By the way, he's complimented me on my looks before. The comment literally came out of nowhere. Of course, I was shocked when he said that, and I could see that a lot of my coworkers were too, since the comment was so unwarranted. I told him, "Well, if I'm not allowed to wear makeup, then you shouldn't be allowed to keep your beard, given that you go from a grown man to a 12-year-old boy when you shave." He turned really red and tried to say something, but my boss didn't let him. I thought that was the end of the situation, but I found out that some of the other employees are making fun of him using the comment I made. I now feel kinda bad for what I said. I told my family, and most of them agreed that what I said was more hurtful than what he said, but he shouldn't have named me and tried to make an example out of me in the first place. They, except my mother, have never liked that I wear makeup. I guess they took this opportunity to remind me why I shouldn't wear it. They're against it because they think I'm trying to show off, and I truly have no idea about Mario. My mum is a very strong woman who taught me not to put up with men telling me how to look and act, which is why I was able to defend myself. Maybe I should have said something more professional, it's just that in the heat of the moment, I couldn't think of anything else to defend myself. The whole office was there, including HR, so they already knew about the issue. As far as I know, the interaction is documented, but I don't know if they're going to take any action. I wouldn't say it's a hostile work environment, but it's definitely uncomfortable, since a lot of the female coworkers stopped talking to him, and males are basically ostracizing Mario. My office is very laid back and not at all sexist or misogynist. That's why the comment shocked so many people and why he's being bullied over it now. I don't think my makeup is misleading. I'd be deeply concerned if a client thought that I was born with shimmery inner corners and glossy lips. Mario can go to heck as far as the narrator is concerned. Anyone else who makes unsolicited opinions on other people's appearance can as well. I think the reason most of us, and by us I mean normal well-adjusted people, don't just walk up to people and make comments like this about them, are because we understand that A, it will hurt their feelings and empathy is a whole thing we have to live with, and B, on the more selfish side, we know that engaging in this kind of social interaction means that we're just as liable to being targeted as the other party. Don't dish it out if you can't take it, peeps. I'm not altogether sure that Mario is the absolute worst based on the information we have. I try to keep the principle of Hanlon's razor in mind and remind myself never to ascribe to malice what can be explained by stupidity. And certain people raised a certain way can just blurt out stuff like this from time to time. But that doesn't make it okay, and with all that said, if the author and Mario were weighed on an opposing jerk scale, I'm absolutely sure Mario would be the one to plummet. I'm an educational specialist, and my district has been allowing some people to work from home all this year so that they wouldn't have to take sick days. Well, this January, my child was sick, so I asked if I could take 2 work-from-home days instead of sick days because my position would allow for that. I was told in no way was that going to be possible because they're not doing that anymore, and I have to take sick days. I told him it would be absolutely perfect for me to work from home because I wasn't having classes that week anyway, and I couldn't get all of my paperwork completed over the next 2 days. We also have our office phones set up on our laptops, so I'd be able to take phone calls from home as well. This would cost my district 0 money to allow. Nope, still denied. I maliciously complied. Being that I wasn't allowed to work from home, I set an away message on my email and voicemail that indicated, "Since the school no longer allows its employees to work from home, I will be out with a sick child and have taken my own personal sick days to take care of him over the next couple of days. I'll be returning emails and voicemails upon my return." I didn't answer my cell phone from coworkers or bosses. I ended up being out 3 days, And there were some major issues at work that could have been cleared up in about 30 seconds if only I was allowed to work from home. On the bright side, not working from home allowed me to get some really great mummy and toddler snuggles. It also allowed me to come to the realization that school districts don't really care that much, and that's why we're all so burnt out. Well, they told you to take a sick day, and you sure did that with all the associated perks. Teachers, the vast majority of you are amazing people who deserve better treatment. As the author says, if they'd just been able to answer their phones and emails at home, then everything would have been great for both school and employee. As a former manager, who wasn't great at his job by the way, I can tell you that some of them react to even the slightest disruption of their regular plans like they've been asked to stick their hand into a wasp's nest. Yes, you might have to justify to your superiors why X isn't at their desk, but honestly, sticking up for your employees and giving them a bit of slack when you can should be something you can work in, especially if it seems like in this case, the employee's physical absence would do nothing to impact the running of the office. Treat your people right, and they might go out of their way to help you in their future. Loyalty is priceless. Am I the jerk for giving my mother-in-law a fake copy of my house key and exposing her on Christmas dinner? I want to preface this by saying that I, a 34-year-old female, married my husband, 37, a year ago. His mum is snoopy and annoying as frick. She can't help it, that's just how she is, as my dear in-laws always say. My husband and I purchased a new house recently. My mother-in-law kept pushing to get an emergency key. She promised that she'd only use it in an emergency, but given the fact that she had an emergency key to our old apartment and walked in on us being intimate twice, but my husband didn't think it was a big deal, I just couldn't trust her. So I just sent her a fake key after she kept pushing, and she had a smug look on her face after I hand-delivered it to her. Days gone by, and on Christmas dinner, my mother-in-law angrily called me out on the fact that I gave her a fake copy of the house key. She shamed me for doing this in front of everyone else in the family, but in my defensive state, I asked her how she found out, and she said days ago when she came over at 4 while my husband and I were out. I reminded her, "Didn't you promise that you wouldn't use it unless there's an emergency? So you tried to get in when there was no emergency and you broke the promise you made to us." She went red in the face, and the other family started staring, and some even laughed at her for the face she made. She suddenly got up from her seat and rushed into the kitchen, where she had a huge meltdown so loud the next-door neighbors must have heard. Literally, I've never heard a 60-plus-year-old woman throw a tantrum like that. Needless to say, dinner went pretty awkwardly, and my husband and his sister were giving me looks. My husband went off on me on the car, and said I lied and manipulated and humiliated and exposed his mum, and said he wouldn't have let me get away with it had he known. Unfortunately, my husband always thinks that his mum is doing nothing wrong, and I'm the crazy overreactor, despite trying to explain to him I feel like my voice is never heard over hers. We had an argument, and he's demanding I apologize to his mum for my childish behavior and for ruining Christmas dinner with the whole family. So, am I the jerk? So this went off unexpectedly, and I thought I'd show my husband some pretty helpful comments I found here minutes ago. But he got mad at me when he saw it and said I was nuts to talk about his family online. He demanded my phone so he could delete it, but I refused, and I went upstairs and into the bedroom. I've never seen him so agitated, and I didn't think he'd react like that, honestly. But thank you guys for your support. It really means so much. I'll update if I can. Thanks again. Yeah, your mother-in-law sounds terrible, but we need to focus on how well-trained she has your husband, too. From the sounds of things, it seemed like other family members kind of enjoyed her being called out at dinner. Classic over-controlling head-of-the-family behavior right there. Get caught dead to rights, leave the room, and throw a tantrum when you're called out. It's hard to work out how the husband can see the author as the bad guy when his mother literally broke promises and still accused the author of publicly shaming her, despite the fact that the explosive incident started with the so-called victim trying to initiate a family witch hunt at the dinner table in front of everyone. I can, to an extent, understand his anger at the wife for airing their laundry online, but it also has to be acknowledged that it was done in an anonymous forum. There's no way within reasonable boundaries that any of their friends and family could find out about this without freakish luck or actually sharing it to each other. So yeah, the in-laws are to blame. Maybe they'll stop inviting you to family events. And maybe that will be a 100% positive result. Good riddance. Entitled parents are angry that I won't babysit 5 out of the 7 days of the week. I never expected I'd be posting on here, but here I am. My brother and sister-in-law, both 32, moved back into my parents' home last week. They have 4 kids, 1, 3, 4, and 6. So of course, what was a peaceful house has turned into a chaotic mess, like a literal pigsty. Friday, my brother asked me what my day-to-day schedule was like so they can get an idea of how babysitting would work. Obviously, I went, what the frick? Because I never agreed to babysit for anyone. I sat there dumbfounded and asked him to elaborate. Apparently, my dad offered to help them with childcare by using me, despite me having classes to attend both in person and online, and I work part-time, and no one cared to check with me to see if that was okay. I flat out said no, I wasn't babysitting Monday, Friday, and they'd have to find some other solution. This upsets my sister-in-law, and she starts complaining that I act like I don't love my nieces and nephews, because I'm not willing to help them out and take care of them. Again, what the frick? My dad started complaining and told my mum to make me agree. I just got up and finished my dinner in my room because I wasn't about to deal with them guilt-tripping me. Later, my brother approached me. He showed me what was basically a weekly schedule that had the hours they worked and the hours I was expected to look after the kids. All 4 because the 6-year-old is homeschooling at the moment. To spare the rest of the boring details, I'd be on duty from 6 a.m. till 1 p.m., then again from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. because they wanted special time. Again, I shut that crap down and told him they were crap out of luck because I wasn't doing it. Cue my sister-in-law telling my dad I still won't do it, so he came in and started calling me selfish and lazy and said I'd have to come around eventually since they'll be living here for a while. Let me add, my dad doesn't even work and my mum does. He sits on his butt all day watching TV, and when she gets home, he doesn't even speak to her until he wants to know what she's making for dinner. They don't even trust him to take care of the 2 oldest ones. My dad can barely make a sandwich. He's volunteered my mother and I for these services before. My dad's siblings, as messed up as him, used to drop their kids off at our house back when I was a middle schooler. My mum had banned them from dropping their kids off after they ghosted us for 2 weeks with 8 kids, from both my uncles and my aunt. All of these kids were under the age of 10, by the way. Majority of the responses are telling me to move out, and I'm trying, believe me. I'm saving up enough money so that I can be set the first few months that I'm out. Hopefully, I can be moved out by December, maybe sooner. Since I'm only working part-time again, I'm not actually making enough to move out and get by on my own. My only hope is that my best friend and I will move in together. We've discussed it before, and that we'll make enough together to get by. Also, adding that my parents don't have any of my banking info, thank goodness. I closed the account they had access to when I turned 18, and I'm getting a new lock for my door because the one I currently have can be picked easily. I'm definitely going to try and get food stamps. If things progress any further from now, I'm going to try and stay with relatives, and if that doesn't work, then I'll try and rent a room. Oh, and by the way, I'm getting a buttload of messages and comments calling me useless, lazy, and selfish because I refuse to babysit and because I live at home. I'm genuinely curious. Are you all just a special kind of stupid or trolls? I refuse to believe you're all seriously so bothered by this. I've also seen a few comments about getting my mum away. Truth be told, my dad's family would no doubt ceaselessly bother her with messages until there's no tomorrow. I will talk to her about it though, she deserves the world and so much more. And I don't know who was watching the kids before they moved back, but I assume whoever it was stopped watching them because they didn't have the funds anymore, which is why they wanted me to do it for free. Well, this is a whole can of dysfunctional family worms right here. Your mum doesn't seem too bad, but your siblings are the worst for just expecting you to balance work, study, and, I can't stress this enough, 9 hours of free babysitting per day. Add on to this the sheer nerve of taking 2 hours off for themselves after loading your schedule with full-time, free caretaking jobs, and just expecting you to be okay with that. But I think the worst culprit might be your dad. Look, not everyone can work. But he's clearly just checked out of his home life if he doesn't understand that his much harder working wife and daughter can't do this stuff. If he's unwilling to at least just help out in the process. I don't know whether he's unable to work due to some other circumstance, But it sounds like he has your mum effectively trapped in that situation and that you're rightly quite enthusiastic about moving. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my dream wedding dress, even though it means my fiancé's family won't attend? I'm in a lot of turmoil right now, and it feels like everything is falling apart. I've never had a great relationship with my future mother-in-law. It isn't terrible, but I can sense that she doesn't like me. My fiancé is very close to his family, so there has to be some tension. I didn't invite my mother-in-law wedding dress shopping because our relationship is awkward, but I thought I'd show her a picture to make her feel included. My dress is a beautiful, flowy, beachy dress, but not technically a wedding dress and could be ordered in color. I bought it from a small local boutique that we both love. Mother-in-law said that I can't wear that dress because she brought the same one for her 50th birthday, which is 2 weeks after my wedding. Mother-in-law has already brought the dress, though in a mint green color. There's enough detail that you can see that it's clearly the same dress, and she has the receipt to prove that she got it first. Lavish birthday parties are a thing in our social circle, so I know that she's invested serious time and money in this party. I said that I'm still going to wear my dress, despite the fact that I could easily return it with no loss, because I didn't do this out of malice and I love my dress. My mother-in-law says if she wears it 2 weeks after I do, everyone's going to think that she's pathetic and copying her son's young wife. I said, sorry, but not really my problem. I actually did suggest that we go shopping for a new one for her, and I offered to pay for it. She played fake confused and said why would she need a different dress since she's never going to see me in mine. I'm done talking to her because she asked me to please not contact her anymore. Her kids have blocked me on everything, and her husband banned me from the house. Everything has gone crazy since I said that. His entire side of the family and the friends that the mother-in-law invited have all backed out of the wedding. So about 15 people, and it will be noticeable. His sisters were supposed to be in the wedding party on his side, but they've dropped out and have blocked him on everything. His stepdad won't talk to him and says he regrets raising him, and he isn't a real man because a real man would stand up for his mum. His biological dad is even on the mother-in-law's side, which doesn't actually surprise me because they're good friends. But he called us up to shame us the other night too. My fiancé is hurting and found out that his family had a big beach day and invited everyone but him. He called the mother-in-law and they talked but didn't come to a resolution. She said if I refuse to do the right thing, the only answer is that no one who's going to her party can go to the wedding as well. He tried calling his sisters-in-law and found out that they blocked him. He's wavering and said he doesn't know if he'll marry me if I wear the dress because he thinks she is morally in the right. He only stood up for me to present a united front in case we do get married. He's mad at me now and feels like she had it first. For some information, mother-in-law has never acted like this before, truly ever. She's normally extremely laid back and doesn't show emotion and isn't really attention-seeking, which is why my fiancé is so confused. At this point, I think that the relationship with his sisters and stepdad is beyond repair for now, and I'm scared to have them at the wedding. To all the people saying I should wear it to her birthday, ha ha ha, but I'm banned, and her ex has already promised to act as a bouncer. Not that I'd ever crash it. Okay, final update. My dress is going back to the store, and I apologize to her because I can't understand it, but something deeply hurt her. My mother-in-law and my fiancé are talking for the first time in over a month. She seems exhausted and sad, but maybe there's hope. I really don't think my stepfather-in-law or my sisters-in-law will ever get over this, but we'll see. Well, I'd say I'm far more on your side than your in-laws, but this feels like a lot of people are really just sticking to their guns long past the point where literally anyone should have just stepped back and taken a different dress just to keep the peace. I guess good on you for your ultimately being the bigger person and trying to help your spouse reconcile with parts of his family. The man of the hour is in mixed status. There's a confusing mix of supporting you, wanting to break off your wedding, and being mad at you going, but it's also very hard to be in that sort of situation against your entire blood family over a dress. Ultimately, I think everyone kinda sucks here, and it's as much down to a lack of information and communication as it is to a massive surplus of bloody-minded stubbornness. Again, with a piece to my head, I would side with the bride, but I don't think this situation should have ever gone this far in the first place. Maybe, depending on how much importance you place on the wedding being the bride's special day, you'll feel more strongly. Hopefully the author and her partner's relationship was salvageable. I don't know if it sounds like future family gatherings are going to be great, to be honest. Take my front row seat and tell me to just sit behind you? If you insist. Bear with me since I'm not a great storyteller, but I thought this one needed to be here. During halftime at our local high school's football game, we went to the concession stand to get some food. Now, I didn't think this would be an issue because we were sitting with a group of people, but I laid out my stuff on the bleachers anyway. However, when we got back, we were met with a group of middle-aged people and a rather elderly lady sitting in our spot and my stuff just tossed to the side. Now, usually, I'm an extremely nice person, to the point that people are always yelling at me for being too nice and getting taken advantage of. But this week, I've had enough. I'm sick of being taken advantage of and done dealing with people's well, you know. I stood there for a minute and said, this is our seat. You took our seat, and that's extremely rude. The leader of the middle-aged ladies, who we'll call Karen, snapped back, "They said no one was sitting here, so sorry," but made no attempt at moving, to which my husband said, "Yeah, you look really sorry." Karen motioned behind her and said, "There's room back there." However, there was only one small section of bleacher directly behind her and between our entire group. I thought about it for a second and realized that arguing wasn't going to get us anywhere and would just kind of make me look bad. So I smiled to my husband and said, "Okay, let's squeeze in there." It was like he could read my mind in that second and knew exactly what was about to happen. So, my husband and I, along with our 4 children, squeezed right up behind and beside Karen. As anyone with 4 kids, or anyone that has ever seen kids, you can probably see where this went. These kids were running on pure sugar, adrenaline, and school spirit after a long first week of school. And I made sure the youngest, a 6-year-old boy, sat right next to me, directly behind Karen and her large bleacher chair she had set up. Did I also mention that the reason we were sitting up front is because kids can't sit still. These kids like getting as close as possible to see the game, but also enjoy coming back to us to sit and talk for a bit. In any other situation, I would have made sure my kids were respectful and courteous of those around us. I would have put a stop to the screaming when our team scored, the jumping up and down, chanting with the cheerleaders, running between us and the fence, but not this night. They had no idea of the secret war that was going on, and they had a blast. I was secretly hoping the 6-year-old would spill something. Sadly, we didn't have anything super messy, and these kids would never willingly give up their food. I think it took Karen all of 5 minutes to realize her mistake. The cringing from the screams right behind her, the leaning from side to side when they were standing at the fence blocking her view, the 6-year-old happily swinging his feet back and forth, oblivious to the fact that he was repeatedly kicking the back of her seat. Karen was getting audibly and visibly annoyed from it all and kept giving me dirty looks as if to say, "Control your children," where I'd just shrug and look at my husband and say, "I tried to tell her." One by one, those in Karen's group started to leave. But Karen held on the longest and still only made it about half an hour before she decided that she couldn't take it anymore and left. Now, I'm not a complete monster. I made sure my kids didn't bump or bother the elderly lady, and I even asked Karen to move her purse she'd put behind her before it got stepped on, but even that was met with a scoff. Maybe next time, though, Karen will think twice before stealing seats from kids, because she might get more than she bargained for by inviting us to squeeze in behind her. This is fantastic. Maybe even hearing someone labeled Karen automatically puts me against them, but that's society's problem now. So now our viewers know how to bias the narrator. But back to the topic at hand. Honestly, I don't know how many people would feel entitled to take clearly held seats after the game had already started, and the ones I do know are jerks, so I'm pinning the majority of this on Karen and co. Much like the author, I'll hold off on Karen the elder. She was probably just relieved to have a place to sit and was trusting her friends to find a suitable grouping where they could all be together. I imagine that with all the stresses that come with managing a horde of children, you don't often get the chance to enjoy their antics, so I'm happy for the author in this regard as well as the very obvious joy of vengeance. I can imagine there was a fair bit of catharsis in this whole encounter. Turn those sprinting, screaming, kicking, rambunctious little vomiting volcanoes into a force for good for once. And enjoy the devastation. The restraints are off and they can release their full potential. Give in to the dark side. Glorious. My boss wouldn't accept my resignation letter. After several months of having my vacation time off requests denied, my staff being fired and not replaced, and my work hours increased without my consent, I walked into my boss's office and handed her my resignation letter. I was giving 4 weeks' notice, which I thought was really nice of me. She looks at me, says, "No, I can't deal with this today," packed her stuff and left for a day of shopping on company time. I went to my office, cleaned it out, finished off a day's work and put my keys in her mailbox. The next day I got a call from HR saying they were giving me the day off without pay to think about what I did, and that I was expected to be at work the next day. No thanks. 2 years later, I'm living my dream life. Suck it, Joan. I guess, in short, Joan works hard to get me to quit, I quit, and Joan gives the surprised Pikachu face. Thank you for your service, and screw you, Joan. I must admit, I don't entirely understand why Joan thought she could just nope you out of quitting. It would only be sweeter if they were forced to give you severance. But who are we kidding? A place like this isn't going to tolerate a good union existing. Good on you for getting out and living the good life afterwards. Go forth and prosper. Today, I messed up by not being able to explain to my wife the existence of a dress that wasn't hers in the wash. Friends, my marriage was on the edge of a knife just now. Story time. My wife, a 40-year-old woman, came into the bedroom with an unknown dress that she found in the dryer. She asked, "Where did this dress come from?" Mystified, I said, "It's not yours? I know my own dresses." At this point, she's making light, but there is smoldering anger behind those brown eyes, and I knew I was legitimately in danger. I have no idea. At this point, I'm scrambling to come up with anything that doesn't look like I'm cheating. Because even I realize that despite being innocent, this doesn't look good, and I'm in trouble. I have no idea where the dress is from. Stalling for time, I ask what size it is. A dumb fricking question. Not her size. Frickety frick. Alas, it was way too small for me while being too large for her. More scrambling, and I say, maybe it was from daycare and got sent back with my kid, a 3-year-old boy's, dirty clothes. A long stretch, but I'm painfully aware that the longer this mystery goes on, the more screwed I am. No one has stayed at our house in the last 2 years. The whole time I'm thinking crap. I suggest maybe someone is sabotaging me. It sounded stupid the moment I said it, but I mean, what the frick is happening? I then say, "It's kinda nice, maybe you should try it on." Please. Nobody ever take advice from me, ever. Her eyes are beginning to promise my horrible death despite still seeming amused. But don't be fooled, the Reaper was at my door. I'm literally sweating at this point and trying to keep it light-hearted, and it's becoming more and more difficult. Has my dryer wormholed into another person's house in some twisted cosmic joke? Anything is possible now. My wife is losing her humor by the nanosecond as I stare dumbly at this goddamn dress. I'm at a complete loss, and then a revelation comes to me in my moment of need. An epiphany for the ages. A memory to redeem every forgotten thing my notoriously bad memory has forgotten over the years on the daily. I say, "Was it with that skirt my mom gave you?" My wife showed visible relief as she checked her phone. Sure enough, there's a picture of the dress in her messages of the items of clothing my mum gave her. High five, brain. My marriage was saved to screw up another day. In short, an unknown dress materialized in the dryer, and neither my wife nor I had any explanation for it. This did not reflect well on me, to say the least. Eventually, we figured it out, and my marriage didn't crash and burn. Glad that we figured that one out in the end. Good save on you for having a better memory than your wife about the clothes that she got from someone else. Craziness. Isn't the norm for finding out about your partner's affairs happening to see a pair of panties or undies in the dryer? Which is wild because it implies that the naughty outside party is just walking around commando after doing the deed. But also, to find a full frock just left behind suggests either an advanced level of planning for a fling, or that someone else left the house more or less undressed and just took off down the road, which is hilarious, but highly unlikely. I fully sympathize with the author's blind panic, muting him into being unable to present any of the other scenarios that could have teleported the item of clothing into their dryer. Ultimately, this is funny, and I'm sure you guys were able to laugh it off afterwards. Good job, Mum. Your charity nearly got your son into very hot water. Nice to see that you can still potentially inflict that on him without him even living under the same roof. Next time he forgets your birthday, why don't you go around with another sneaky donation and give him a couple more tense run-ins? Am I the jerk for using my neighbor's trash for my dog's number twos? I take my dog for walks daily around my residential neighborhood. Normally, he does his business fairly early on, and I always dispose of it in a nearby trash bin. However, today he decided to go a bit later into the walk. Given that there were no trash bins anywhere close by, I was resigned to holding on to his crap, tightly sealed in a plastic doo-doo bag. That was until I saw one of the houses on the street I was on had their garbage bin located roughly halfway down their driveway, off to the side. It was right out in the open, about 10 feet from the sidewalk. Without thinking much of it, I walked into the driveway, opened the bin, and tossed the bag of doo-doo inside. When I returned to the sidewalk, a man who'd been walking nearby approached me. It turns out he was the owner of the house, and he did not look happy. He said, "Hey, don't you ever do that again, you understand me?" I was taken aback, not realizing that I might have done something wrong. People walk further onto properties to deliver spam mail or solicit all the time, and I hadn't considered that people might have a problem with what I did. Also, if it matters, these bins are public property, belonging to the city. I had no intention of being out of line, nor of causing a conflict. I simply said, "Okay," and went on my way. But the incident is sticking with me. I wouldn't have a problem if someone did the same to my bin, if I chose to put it in that sort of location. But maybe that's just me. Plus, I keep my bins directly beside my house. That being said, I don't want to be a crap person or neighbor, so please tell me, am I the jerk? You, sir or madam, are the jerk here, but not the worst kind. I didn't see too much wrong with this until I perused the comments a little bit and got myself educated. Your offense, by and large, comes down to trespassing on people's property and the small to moderate probability that your bag of number 2 can quite easily split open in the bin and spread its signature scent into the residents' trash, which they will often bring back into closer proximity to their house. One warm summer's day later, and the fragrance of your gift will now be a much less welcome guest in their vicinity. People shared stories of having to get in the bin and scrub the offending stains out by hand, or of their garbage getting rejected by the collection companies for the contents and having to fish it out themselves. So you're not a complete intentional jerk, you just didn't really think it through, and now you, and the rest of us, have been educated. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Entitled mother and her daughter wear a white dress to my sister's wedding. My sister, aka the bride, got married yesterday. Yay! However, the groom's aunt, Karen, a 50-ish female, was not a very pleasant guest. A little over a week ago, the bride got a text from Karen asking if her little girl, 8-year-old, could be the flower girl. The bride and groom have been engaged for over a year, and they asked the groom's niece, a 2-year-old girl, to be the flower girl way back then. Karen and little girl live super far away from groom's family, so they've only met the couple twice in little girl's life. Groom's niece, however, is very close to my sister and her uncle. My sister was a little teed off that some woman she barely knows asked her to change her flower girl a week before her wedding, but was worried about looking like the bad guy. I just told her to say, "Sorry, too late," and that's what she did. A few days later, bride gets another text from Karen saying that she brought the little girl her dress, and she's just so excited. The picture attached shows little girl wearing a white dress. Not a dress with white on it, no. Complete white dress with lace at the top and a white bow around the waist. Trashy, but not the girl's fault. The bride went from teed off to fairly irritated at this point. But she doesn't want to look like the bad guy or make a bad impression on her in-laws. Then comes the wedding day. We already knew that little girl would be in white and that her mum was rude, so let's just ignore them. But oh boy, we were not expecting Karen to be wearing a white lace dress as well. A grown woman, in her 50s, not only demanding her kid be in the wedding a week before the big day and buying her a white dress, but also wearing a white lace dress herself. It's different if you genuinely don't know and then apologize for sure. But Karen was a grown woman who has been to many weddings, including her own. The audacity of this witch aside, everything went smoothly. Karen was drunk very early on, so she probably didn't care. She kept asking if the kids could throw any leftover petals after the wedding. The little girl asked the professional photographer to take pictures of her. I offered to accidentally spill red wine on her, but my sister said she was content with watching everyone else at the reception ignore Karen and talk crap about her. In short, groom's aunt is mad that her kid isn't the flower girl and they both wear white dresses to my sister's wedding. Oh, I also forgot to mention that instead of sitting quietly with everyone else during the ceremony, Karen was off to the side taking pictures of little girl posing next to a tree. Then at the end of the ceremony, as we were walking back up the aisle, little girl was standing in the middle and didn't move for the couple or the procession behind her. My sister and her husband walked around her, but the cousin I was walking with made her move aside. People have floated the idea of having the photographer change the color of the aunt and niece's dresses. Then make sure they're posted on the internet. That is a fantastic idea. Even if the photographer can't, I'm sure we can find someone who's savvy enough with Photoshop to do the job. I wonder which color doesn't suit Karen the most. Yeah, this seems like a pretty massive self-own by the woman in white. Despite what the author says about her surely knowing about the faux pas of wearing a white dress at a wedding, it kinda feels like she might be completely oblivious. So maybe there's a degree of ignorance here. At least she warned you of her oncoming transgression, even if it did get multiplied from a child-sized problem to a grown woman-sized one. Also, it's unclear if the lady in question is actually called Karen or not. Kinda perfect if that is the case. As usual, we'll give our blanket pardon to the kid. But that young'un is in trouble if her mum is her only main role model growing up. Reasons like this is why it can be helpful to rebel against your parents, children. And let's give a big hand to the bride for being about as patient and level-headed as someone can be during this sort of indignity. Way to take the high road and be classy. Often, that's your best revenge, as it clearly seems like even if she didn't acknowledge Karen's bad choice, the other guests certainly did, and probably noticed the bride's lack of comment as well, which made the lady of the hour appear even more saintly by comparison. Oh, you want me to apply to another team? You've got it. This happened a few years ago. I'm a data analyst and have too many STEM degrees to count. I work at a big bank where the only thing that matters is years of experience. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD or a bachelor's, they both mean the same thing. I came in as an entry-level 28-year-old because I got so many degrees. I was doing so much better than an entry-level analyst that once my minimum year's experience hit, I told my director I wanted 80k or I'm going to apply to another team. He told me that there was no way I was going to get 80k from any team. I asked him if he could just ask HR because I didn't really want to change teams, but I was going to get as much money as I thought I deserved. After I asked him, he said, "I'm not going to ask HR because I know 100% that you're not going to get paid that much no matter what. If you want to waste time applying to other teams just to be told the exact same thing, then go ahead, pal." I applied to another team in the same department the same day. This was Monday. On Wednesday, I got called by the director of that team for an interview, and I got an offer on Thursday. The offer was for 92k. I instantly accepted it and told my current director that I got an offer and had accepted it. He got so mad at me and asked me why I'd apply and accept a position without telling him. I said, "You told me to." After 2 weeks, I started my new position on my new team and I got a call from my old VP. He asked me why I left without letting him or my old director counteroffer. I told him what happened and he was shocked. He told me they would have counteroffered for me on the spot. It turns out my old director never thought I would leave. Joke's on him. Right then, I knew it was a great decision to leave the team. If he had the option the entire time to counter and just gave me the raise and chose not to, then I don't want to be on that team anyway. Thank you for all the support and words of encouragement about leaving jobs. It was actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. I loved that team, but I knew what I was worth, and they wouldn't give it to me, even though it turns out they could have. And it just so happens to have been one of the best career choices of my life. Since then, I've talked to so many people about career moves, and it seems that if you aren't getting progression at your company, then there are almost zero reasons to stay. I've been asked about or pointed out that I should have been able to list my degrees, and too many to count is not possible. That's very true, I was just exaggerating and being lazy. For those who wanted them, I have a BS in mathematics, a BS in education, BS in computer science with a concentration in cybersecurity, a master's in theoretical mathematics, master's in data analytics, and currently I'm finishing up my master's in data science. Cripes. Textbook example of managerial incompetence in your old director there. The author never mentioned what his old salary was, but 92k is massive compared to almost any entry-level salaries in any profession. And if your boss really thought that loyalty alone would be enough to keep you around, he was due a wake-up call. In the vast majority of cases, when it comes to employment, only be loyal to your paycheck. Because no matter what they tell you, they will drop you the moment you start to be even moderately inconvenient to them. So yeah, your old boss is a bit of a jerk and just kind of terrible at his job for reading that situation so poorly. You were overqualified. It sounds like you were terrific at your entry-level position and you were in a massive demand from other parts of the bank. And look, people make mistakes, but once you called his bluff, he still had a chance to fix the situation. Maybe by meeting the minimum offer that you'd asked for in the first place to keep you with the team you wanted. And it sounds like your VP would have been happy to do so. Literally avoided a situation where all parties could have been content just by being stiff-necked and unwilling to try to find a solution. Insanity. Am I the jerk for throwing out my husband's dinner after he went to eat at his mum's house? My mother-in-law calls every night to ask what we're having for dinner. Then she brags about what she's cooking to make me look bad, especially if we're getting takeout. I used to care, but not anymore. But my husband would ask me to make dinner only for him to go and eat the dinner his mum makes at her home, which is 10 minutes away and using the "that's my favorite meal" excuse. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mum called. I told him that he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having, but acted surprised that I cooked his meal. She then went on to tell him that she cooked X meal and told him to come over, to which he said, okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up, getting ready to leave. He told me, no offense, but this meal, that his mum cooked, was even more of a favorite than the one I'd cooked. He grabbed his keys and left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out, and then I ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mum lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked, but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it and that I'd thrown it out. He said, what? And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mum instead. He began yelling at me, asking if I really did that, then he called me petty and horrible and went upstairs, saying that what I did was 100 times worse than what his mum had done. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. And an update to make one thing clear, that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mum and attended community college and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make and I try to do that, but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. So, am I the jerk? I wrote my situation here on the website almost 24 hours ago, and haven't really read every single answer because, wow, there's just too many. I just want to let you know that I will be sitting down with my husband soon, After he breaks the silence, I'm just giving him the space he said he wanted, and I'm going to show him this post in the hopes he sees how none of this was my fault. I'll also be pushing for couples counseling, although he's always been against it, but we'll see how things go. I'm not gonna lie, I still feel upset and like my efforts aren't being appreciated. His mum is definitely up to something with her little upsetting stunts. Though she's not outright rude or anything, the small things she does kind of irritate me. I realize how important boundaries are, but I also realize how enforcing a ban can be difficult. I'm hoping and praying that we'll tackle this issue so that our marriage won't suffer. But if he's still somehow unable to do his part, then that's on him, and I'm no longer willing to go through similar stuff and just take it, you know? Yeah, you aren't the jerk here. He's definitely a man-child at best, and a bit of a jerk at worst. Disregarding the effort that your spouse goes through to make you happy, especially something like going out of their way to do something that you've told them you love, only to bail at a moment's notice, is such a massive disrespect. Frankly, couples therapy might be a very good thing if you get him to agree to it. Although, to be honest, from the other people like this I know, I can't see him taking any criticism of his relationship with his mother very well at all. Your mother-in-law is kind of a piece of work too, but ultimately the repeated offense of sprinting out of the house like a cartoon character the moment his favorite treat is put on the horizon is up to him. Once was definitely too many times for this to happen, and avoiding the problem for so long probably hasn't done anyone any favors either. I honestly don't know how to deal with the idea of a spouse's mother calling to offer comment and critique on whatever meal I happen to be making for them that evening. Even just thinking about that actually kinda makes me angry. The author clearly has the patience of a saint, but has let the whole game run on too long, and needs to take steps to address the issue, which she seems to be doing. I flipped out on my fiancée for selling the gaming chair that my brother gifted me to pay for her gym membership. 33-year-old male here. I lost my 27-year-old brother due to terminal illness a couple of months ago. We were so close and had a lot in common. He was a gamer and had all kinds of gaming gear, including a gaming chair that he wanted me to have before he died. It's devastating because we were really hoping and had plans to spend Christmas together. This chair I consider special because it was my brother's favorite of all his gear, and it reminds me of him whenever I sit in it. I don't play much anymore. It just brings me closer to him to a degree I can't explain, and it brings me so much comfort. My fiancée, 31 and with me for 7 years, knew my brother. She knew how close we were, though she did have issues with me spending too much time with him after her and I got engaged, saying I should focus on us more, but my brother's health was at its worst at that time, and since my parents were overwhelmed, I felt the need to come and help out. We live in an expensive area. I pay so much for rent, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. She used to rent in this apartment before we met, and I moved in with her and my name was added to the lease. Now I pay the whole rent by myself. I suggested moving to a cheaper area, but she didn't welcome my suggestion. I keep the chair in my office, and days ago I found out that my fiancé, who's been out of a job and complaining about no longer being able to attend the gym, took the chair and sold it online to be able to pay for her next month's gym membership. When I found out, I flipped out hugely and had a very negative reaction. She told me that she was desperate for money, and after selling all she had no choice but to sell the chair. I reminded her of who this chair belongs to, but she said I already have tons of keepsakes from my brother, and so I shouldn't act like it was the end of the world. I asked her who she sold it to, and she told me that if I was going to buy it back, I needed to pay for it myself, but I put my foot down and said she had to pay. She also vented about her past eating disorders and her anxiety when it comes to keeping fit, and claimed that I was dismissing that she was struggling. I yelled at her and called her inconsiderate and selfish, and told her she should never have taken and sold any of my stuff for a gym membership when she literally could have kept working out from home. Also, the gym she attends is, in my opinion, way too expensive, and she knows that, but she stuck with it because of some trainer that she knows there. She said this trainer helped her a lot in the past and wants to continue attending the gym as long as the trainer is working in it. We have money issues because of A, her employment, and B, the expensive area we live in. A gym membership is not a necessity. I brought this up with her during the argument, and she accused me of not caring about her anxiety about her body, and brought up past arguments about her eating disorders, talking about how unsupportive I'd been. I myself am struggling with money since wedding planning pretty much took up all of my savings, but she wants an extravagant party, and so do her parents. She started crying as we argued. Then she went to stay with her mum, who tried to give me a stern talk about my attitude, but I didn't answer that and haven't been talking to my fiancé since then. Things haven't gotten better, and I got called overdramatic for reacting and treating my fiancé like that over a gaming chair. I feel guilty because I've never yelled at her in my life before. Of all things I have that belong to my brother, this chair is my favorite, and she knew that, but she claimed it was just there in my office and denied that I ever sit on it. Am I the jerk? Was I too hard on her? Some say I went overboard because this is a gaming chair and it was a bit childish of me to make a fuss over it, but I already explained why I had this reaction, aside from the fact that money is an issue we already have. She has mental issues and she blames them on me sometimes, saying I'm not being supportive and understanding enough just because I point out what she does wrong and don't let things slide like she expects me to. Because I feel like I should add more of her side to the conflict, she told me if, say, I was struggling and needed money and sold some items she had, then she wouldn't be mad at me. But I'm not sure since I'd never do such a thing. But still she insisted that no matter what I do, she'll always be supportive and understanding, just like I should be supportive and understanding of her struggle right now. That made me feel horrible because she had a breakdown and cried because of me. People have suggested that I sell the engagement ring if it comes to it. To be frank, the ring is worth so much more, monetarily of course. My whole issue is mainly about the sentimental value the chair has, and the fact that it helped me a lot during my grieving process. This whole thing just seems kind of sad and terrible for everyone involved, most of all the author. I can't see it going well for anyone. It sounds like money is very tough to come by, but she is disrespecting his property, specifically property with a massive sentimental value to him, in order to pay for a way to satisfy her disorder. And yes, she has a disorder, but she's using it as an excuse for doing bad things. It's pretty murky ground for us nominally mentally healthy people to comment on from the outside, but it's not great. Instead of using the money she had to obtain treatment that might help her more in the long run, it sounds like she's using it to pay some exploitative trainer. I can't see this ending well for the couple in question, and I'm sure that without outside help, either a cutting off of the engagement or an even worse relationship might be on the cards. There's no update on whether the gaming chair was repurchased by him. I hope it was, and that maybe his family stepped in to help him get it back if it was needed. Things like this are vitally important keepsakes from the ones who love us, and I don't know how I'd react if someone took something like this from me. Like I said, this situation seems more tragic than one that we can actually get hot and angry about. Everyone loses here. 2 weeks' notice in writing. My very first job was working fast food at Wendy's. I was 16, and most of my coworkers were also teenagers. There was always work to be done. If you have time to lean, you have time to clean, etc. But working afternoons and evenings with a bunch of teens, there was also plenty of goofing around. Work wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't really that bad either. It was tolerable. Then we got a new manager. This guy was in his 40s and he was a lifer. He was super strict and was about having no fun at work at all. Unfortunately, I became his favorite work vessel because I was easier to control than some of my coworkers. He leaned heavily on me to pick up the slack that the others left. It got real old, real fast. Why should I work more than everyone else for the same pay? Why should I be stuck doing more tasks than my coworkers who continue to goof off? I voiced my concerns to the manager, but nothing changed. He was usually busy hiding in the office with the mirrored glass windows, just watching everyone. He'd only surface on occasion to tell me to work harder and give everyone else a free pass. Eventually, I had enough. One day I marched into his office and demanded that either I get a raise or for him to hold everyone else to the same standards. He didn't go for that. I told him to consider that conversation my 2 weeks' notice then. He said he needed that in writing. I ripped a piece of paper out of a notebook on his desk and I wrote something along the lines of, "This is my 2 weeks' notice," with my name underneath. I walked outside his office, spit on the paper, and stuck it to his mirrored glass window. He could look at it all he wanted that way. I felt amazing. For the next 2 weeks, the manager kept letting me know that it wasn't too late to change my mind about quitting. He kept alluding to a raise, but never actually offered it. For the doubters, yes, this was my personal experience. I started sometime in fall 2006 and I quit in the summer of 2007. Also, I'm aware that 2 weeks' notice is a courtesy, not a necessity. It just seemed wrong to me to not give notice, and 2 wrongs don't make a right. And you were in the right, my friend. Also, it doesn't sound like he gave you any sort of reason to stay, even as much as a promise that he'd get on the other workers' backs, instead of just driving his one most docile staff member that hard. Your boss sounds like a tool, and a good reminder that people quit their bosses, not their jobs. The fact that he only got on the back of the person most willing to listen, and that he didn't even discipline you after the way you quit, suggests he was kind of lacking any sort of ability to control his staff. I searched desperately for any kind of update on what happened to Wendy's after your departure, but alas, we shall never know how this jerk's managerial tenure played out after the author left. I'm sure he didn't exactly make it into the top 1 restaurant in that chain. Also, I think the author's manner of quitting is excellent. The nerve of ripping up the guy's stationery and maliciously complying with his request inside his office, and then walking out like a badass is fantastic. It's always the quiet ones who are the most spectacular when they do snap. The wise man fears the anger of a gentleman. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling my fiancée lazy for wanting to be a stay-at-home wife? I, a 42-year-old male, am engaged to who I feel is the one. A 33-year-old lady. We've been dating for just over 3 years, and I proposed last month. Last night, after another session of wedding planning, my fiancée asked if I'd be alright with her being a stay-at-home wife. At first, I laughed because I thought she was joking, but she was actually very serious. Up until I proposed to her, she was just filled with so much ambition, and she was actually actively going for a better-paying position at her company. I fell in love with her level of motivation. I'd met her when our 2 companies had to work on a project together for another company. I thought we had the same mentality, and I felt pretty blindsided by her sudden change of heart in terms of her future goals. All her friends and our mutual friends are pretty ambitious people. Even the stay-at-home mums are very driven in terms of child rearing. Feels like her sudden desire not to work came out of left field. She told me not to laugh and said she wants to be a stay-at-home wife. I asked her why, as we both make pretty good money at our jobs, and we can't afford our current lifestyle with just one income. She says it's because I make a lot more, which is true, I make about 40% more than her, and we could just scale back our lifestyle, and said, "It's been on my mind a lot. I think working 9 to 5 just isn't for me." I asked her if she was being serious, and she confirmed that she was. I said that I'm not comfortable with that idea, and said maybe if we have kids, she could be a stay-at-home mum. But I'm not cool with her being a stay-at-home wife, and she said that I was just being manipulative, since we're both child-free. But I'd just said that as a hypothetical, since I'm not at all okay with being the sole breadwinner. Like anything could happen to me if I was the only one bringing in income. Even though I don't work in a dangerous job by any means, I sit at a computer, anything could happen. Life is kinda wild like that, isn't it? That divulged into a pretty heated argument, with her saying that I should support her dreams. She never stated what she wants to do with her staying at home, even though I did ask. She just kept reaffirming that, "I know I'll be a lot happier if I was a stay-at-home wife." So this is where I may be the butthole. In the heat of the moment, I said, "Where is this coming from? Why is it your dream to be a stay-at-home wife? Is it your dream to be lazy?" She got really upset at that and had gone to her mother's and said, "We'll talk about it more when you calm down." Since a lot of people ask about our home life, we have a rotating chore list. So like one day I'd be the one to do the laundry, and the next day it would be my fiancée. For example, same with groceries and cooking. It's split pretty evenly, and we do make sure to check off all the items on our to-do list, as we're both pretty fixed about keeping a clean living space. Honestly, I enjoy doing chores. It lets me just zone out and relax and work towards a goal, even if that goal is simply load dishwasher, if that makes any sense. I'll be real here. I don't want her to be a stay-at-home wife. I'm not okay with being the sole breadwinner, and I don't want to support this dream of hers. I want a partner in life, not a dependent doing nothing productive with their days. So, am I an unsupportive jerk of a fiancé? Well, you may be a bit of a tactless nitwit for just belting out, "Is it your dream to be lazy?" But your fiancée isn't doing herself any favors by being so cagey and dancing around the fact that honestly it just seems like she wants to stay at home and do nothing all the time. If she had a dream or a side gig that she wanted to try out properly, most of us who have relatively okay incomes are more than alright with supporting our partner's dreams and seeing if they pan out for a while. But it's really tough to not feel resentment about a spouse who just sits at home all day and does nothing. Stay-at-home motherhood is definitely a job, and unless you're running a house that requires a lot of day-to-day caretaking… look, I'm trying to find literally any way to give his fiancée the benefit of the doubt and coming up blank. The closest I could come up with is maybe she developed some sort of burnout, as he mentioned that she was previously very ambitious and work-oriented. Perhaps someone else in the comments can enlighten me as to some other reason she might be feeling this way. Otherwise, it's very hard to sympathize with the author's partner. You're my son's girlfriend's sister, you must do as I say. My sister is married to a man whose mother was a stay-at-home mum, who decided that adulthood through middle age is still too early to stop overparenting her children, and is also very opinionated about what everyone else should be doing. Especially when it comes to parenting, because she's wonderful at it, apparently. To keep the peace, people in my family let her get away with it. I do not. This greatly upsets her. Back when our children were in elementary school, and before Sis and hubby were formally married, we all lived in the same neighborhood. I'd go to my sister's for a visit, and afterward we'd both walk to the school to pick them up at the end of the day. The mother-in-law insisted on coming too. Sis didn't think that was a hill to die on, so I kept my mouth shut. One day, Her Overly Critical Highness decided that she didn't like my child's coat, and that we needed to fix that, meaning that I would have to spend money to buy another that met her approval. I loved the coat, and also I didn't give a crap about her preferences, so I told her that there was no need to talk about it. She kept it up constantly for almost a week, because comments like, "I don't care if you like it or not," and "I'm not your kid, and even if I were, I'd still tell you to back off," were too vague for her to get the hint that I wasn't going to be pushed around. I tried ignoring her, tried changing the subject, she was just fixated. Finally, I turned around and told her flat out that I didn't give two flying craps in space, what she liked, and that it was none of her fricking business. We're not even related. She got fed up with my stubbornness and advanced on me, poking me hard in the chest over and over. "I don't care if you're related to me or not. You're my son's girlfriend's sister, and you will do what I tell you." I warned her not to make physical contact again, and she started screaming and sobbing, telling everyone in a 2-mile radius that she was being bullied and threatened just because she was trying to be helpful. I laughed and walked out while she was being comforted. An hour later, I had about 20 calls and texts from people telling me to apologize to her to keep the peace, suggesting strongly that I should go out and buy another coat immediately so she wouldn't be upset anymore. Even one threatening to cash me outside. They've always been her worst enablers. Every moment with them was like a mashup between a telenovela and an episode of Trailer Park Boys. To tell the truth, my family had some pretty messed up dynamics, and I am, I guess, the scapegoat. They're not much better than she is, and it gave them even more reasons to scapegoat me. Birds of a feather and all that. My sister has now been with her husband for 25 years, so I have tons of stories about this woman. Like one time about the time my nephew and nieces couldn't come to my daughter's birthday party because I refused to invite her and my sister's boyfriend's mother's nephew's son. Her nephew and his family moved into their downstairs apartment, and he had a son that none of us had had a chance to meet yet. She didn't want him to feel left out, so she insisted that he had to come. He was 11, the rest of the kids were 6 and younger, and of course, she had to come to keep an eye on him. She had fished for an invite the week before, and I didn't bite. This was her, "well, of course I have to go now" solution. Or the time my baby shower was cancelled because I preferred to have my friends as guests instead of my sister's boyfriend's mother, plus mother-in-law and sister-in-laws, almost all of whom I'd never met. Or the time there was a Royal Rumble elimination-style cage match. 1 against 12 because I decided to use my tax refund for my own dental care instead of a new TV. How about the family blow-up because I refused to give her half the bottles of shampoo I'd brought at half price. Okay, people are asking me for more, so more they shall receive. One day, my sister called to say that she was dropping by and showed up with the mother-in-law in tow. I was in the middle of washing dishes, and she got all excited when she saw that I was using a handled sponge that dispensed dishwashing liquid, because she had never seen one before. She asked me for it outright. I pointed out that if I gave her mine, I wouldn't have one. I told her where I got it and how much it was so she could buy her own. She didn't want to buy her own. To be fair, it's a pretty upscale place called the Dollarama. The real good stuff went for $3 there. It was a mall parking lot and 6 houses away from the house she was living in at the time. It might have taken her a whole 10 minutes. She kept bringing it up, so I told them they had to leave. They didn't believe me at first, but I told them I wasn't in the mood to argue about it and it wasn't going to happen, so it would be best for everyone involved. Then the calls started when they got back to my sister's house. How dare I put that poor woman out of the house for asking for something so small? What a ridiculous reason. How could I embarrass her like that? Blah, blah, blah. Apparently the consensus was that I'd have to make it up for her by relinquishing the sponge. It was the only reasonable solution. Alas, I'm unreasonable. She did not get the sponge. I refused to buy myself the same thing twice so that she wouldn't have to go to the trouble of doing it once, the poor dear. I don't even know how I can live with myself sometimes. Before then, I'd been made aware that I was worse than the leader of the Third Reich since I had the nerve to invite my own mother to go prom dress shopping and left my sister's boyfriend's mother out. I should have thought about how her lack of daughters meant that she would not be able to celebrate important mother-daughter milestones like that. I'm so selfish. And after the aforementioned sponge incident, I evolved into super-duper worse than the leader of the Third Reich. I stopped being around her at all a few years ago when I went to North Carolina with my family. Maybe I should start talking to her again. It could jumpstart my shot at internet fame. Cue my brain screaming "No!" at me. I think we should acknowledge here that not once did the author ask for clarification on whether they or the mother in question were the jerk. But you know what? After that admittedly very entertaining barrage of crazy stories about this woman, we can draw our own judgments. It does sound like the rest of the family weren't great either, but then again, I don't know what I'd have been like if I'd had to endure 30 years of that with a family matriarch. I think I probably would have fled the state as well. So at worst, I could say that the author seems a little combative, but honestly, when that is what you're up against, that likely makes you a hero more than anything.
Am I the jerk for calling my wife a bully, knowing it would trigger her? Context: I'm a 36-year-old male and work as a bus driver. I've been doing the same route for about 5 years, and I've gotten to know my regulars pretty well, to the point where I'd consider most of us friends. I enjoy my job, and socializing comes easily to me. My wife, 36, works in an office and drives, so she's never really met any of my regular passengers. So I've been married for about 5 years now, and we've got 2 little kids, 4 and 1. And every few weeks we do the big shop, where we go out to the big Asda, which is like Walmart for you Americans. Everything was fine, and we were getting through the list with the kids sat in the trolley when I hear my wife make a noise of disgust, and I look up to follow her gaze and see one of my regulars getting her own shopping done. Let's call her Elle. Elle is a goth. Very monochrome color scheme, always in black velvet and lace, black lipstick, powdered white face, some visible tattoos, the works. But she's a lovely girl, very sweet, and works as a sign language interpreter at a local secondary school. She's involved with the age concern in her spare time and working towards a PhD. All around a very nice young lady. My wife launches into a snarky tirade about her appearance. Look at that. Why would you choose to look like that? Just asking for attention, then probably complains she can't get a job. She looks like a witch. It's creepy. Wouldn't want that in any place of work, probably on substances, among other things. I told her to stop that, as she was being very rude and judgmental. But she kept going and saying increasingly worse things about Elle, not even toning down her vitriol in front of the kids. I did point out that she was the same Elle that sent us congratulations cards when we had our kids, but to be honest, even if I didn't know Elle at all, I probably would have done the same thing. I want to raise my 2 kids better than I was, and that includes making sure they know it's okay to be different. I need to divert to do some explaining here. I'll be honest, I wasn't the best guy when I was younger. And if I'd seen Elle when I was in school, I probably would have made fun of her too. But we're all adults here, and I think it's time we left that attitude behind us. Even if I didn't know Elle, I'd think that sort of talk was inappropriate, especially as my oldest is very impressionable and due to start school in September. And I don't want him thinking that's an acceptable way to behave. My wife was bullied severely during her teen years, and she's told me how much of an impact it has to this day. From what she's told me, it was mass shunning and painful jabs at her appearance or interests, or anything she did.
I do regret how I behaved when I was a kid. It can be difficult to not get caught up in the bully chain when there are seemingly no consequences. But to be honest, I wish someone had called me out when I was younger. I was not the worst of them by far, but joining in was definitely a jerk move, and I've apologized where I can. My wife has been to counseling a few times, but the mental health service in the UK is pretty subpar, so I'm not sure how well they've worked. Eventually, I just told her to shut up and stop acting like the same bullies that made her life hell when she was in school. She shut up quick. She hasn't spoken to me since, and I got an angry text from my sister-in-law telling me I hurt my wife beyond words. And how dare I compare her to her school bullies who traumatized her so badly as a teenager. I've tried explaining my side and how I want to set a good example for the kids, and also that Elle was a friend of mine who had given us cards when we had both our children, but neither of them will listen, and I'm thinking I might have gone too far. I wasn't thinking in the moment and just wanted to end the conversation, but once she comes around, I can hopefully ask how she'd feel if she knew someone talked that way about her. She isn't a bad person, and we live in a very judgmental world that's not so easily ignored. Sister-in-law is well known for being quite loud and overprotective, so it's not all too surprising. But yes, to be honest, I wish she'd butt out sometimes. In short, my wife went off on a spiteful, judgmental rant about the appearance of someone she doesn't know, and I called her a bully, knowing her painful history with bullying. Well, you were in the right, but it sounds like maybe you could have handled it better. I'd say your instincts were well-founded. What your wife was doing was wrong, and the example she was setting for the kids was terrible, and you were right to tell her so. But it does seem like maybe you used a method that you knew would really affect her, and maybe that was what she needed to think about, but it could have been done more gently or after the fact. And while teaching your kids not to bully is absolutely vitally important, so is not demeaning and villainizing your wife in front of them. None of this is to say that our viewers should think that the narrator is more on the wife's side. I think the author here is trying to do the right thing for everyone, and unfortunately he let his temper get the better of him. Perhaps just going up and interacting with the girl who was the subject of scrutiny might have provided the kids with a better example of the fact that this is a normal person with feelings. Hopefully the author can apologize to his wife and come to a better understanding of why not to do this going forward, and she's open to the talk. If not, then yeah, she's kinda the villain here. Wife forced to give extra credit, assigns it to parents. My wife teaches a lovely group of kids in an area where parents are incredibly strict. The children are almost all operating within the A grade range, and their parents overwork them to ensure the A+. Anyways, the new school year has some parents pestering my wife for extra credit assignments. She's insisted that it's optional for her to assign extra credit, and they've raised the issue up through administration to force her hand. Another teacher, who teaches the same class, gives loads of extra credit, and they want their children to be on an even level. With the news that she'd have to match the amount of given extra credit opportunities, she's decided to involve the children's parents. Examples: 5-page handwritten and legible essays about a historic event the parents were a part of. A 20-minute video interview of their opinions and experiences about certain political events while growing up. Her extra credit is just many different little assignments that take lots of time from the parents' day for an extra couple of points for the next exam. While she continues to assign these extra credit assignments, the participation rate has been 0. Very cunning and clever. If this keeps getting the parents to not participate, then eventually the author can cancel due to a lack of attendance and interest. I'm not sure the parents count as jerks for wanting to get their kids ahead. It depends how hard they're really pushing them, which would decide that. Sadly, as usual, a lot of this probably falls on the education system for overworking their teachers, not compensating them for the extra effort, and pressuring them to do more when the parents come calling. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Keep your woman in line. So this is about my neighbor. My girlfriend and me live in a building with many apartments. Although our apartment isn't that big, it has a huge balcony. And since the current heat wave, we practically live on our balcony. Our next-door neighbor's balcony is directly next to ours. There's about a 50-centimeter gap between them. Next door lives a family. The husband seems fine. He works a lot, he greets me in the hallway, and he doesn't call the cops and landlord when people are too loud. He talks to them first. Good man. His wife is the complete opposite. She's a complete stay-at-home mombi, spelt like zombie but with an M. Her kids are okay, I guess. She has a daughter in elementary school and a boy in like 7th or 8th grade. Yeah, so I never really had problems with this family until this week. My girlfriend adores our balcony, because we haven't had one in our old place. We lived together in my first place. It was a crappy cellar with a bathroom and a kitchen. She grows flowers, tomatoes, and strawberries on our balcony, and she enjoys sunbathing. So because it's really hot and sunny right now, she sunbathes a lot. And she does that in a bikini. And well, she opens up her bikini top when laying on her stomach, never when on her back because our other neighbor is kind of an old creep. Well, he isn't a perv, but he likes to watch people, not just us. In Germany, it's a cultural thing, and middle-class families tend to be kind of nosy. It's a stereotype here. And to be honest, I only like the normal neighbors, the ones who mind their business and maybe knock at your door when they accept a package for you. In Germany, we don't have porch pirates. Delivery men can give it to a neighbor when you aren't home. So, some days ago, I came back from my shift at the hospital, and I met my mombi neighbor in the hallway. It started with the usual small talk, but then it shifted. She asked me to get my girlfriend in line, because she's exposing herself, and her son is distracted. I shrugged it off and got past her. After nearly 10 hours of fighting the stupidity of people in the ER, I wasn't in the mood for her crap. So my girlfriend is maybe giving her son ideas, or something like that. I didn't really pay attention to her, but I guess he saw her back? How alluring, ugh. I then told my girlfriend, and she was just laughing about it. She told me that, yeah, the son is watching her when she was on the balcony and she didn't think much of it. Well, I took my neighbor's advice. My brother is a carpenter, so I asked if he could build a screen for me, a big plate which prevents my neighbors from looking at my balcony. He said yes, and I picked them up yesterday and installed them. And well, today I was talking to my neighbor from the other side, the creep, and he said he'd been talking to the mombi and she seemed annoyed that I put the screening up because it's not very neighbor-friendly and that I'm rude. Well, lady, you chose. If you can't control your kid, I will gladly take this burden off you. Her husband is completely okay with it. He told me that his wife was too nosy anyway and that maybe she was just jealous of my girlfriend and that he's talking to his son about respecting women. I'm mostly asking myself why he's married to her, but well, love has mysterious paths. Or, I don't know, maybe he knocked her up. She plays nice in front of all the neighbors and tries to force a friendship with them. Even the creep doesn't really like her. She's just a bored and snoopy woman with too much time. No big explosion or anything, just a mombi Karen who thinks my girlfriend has to dress like a nun because her 13-year-old son hit puberty. If they find a way to spy again, I'll build the screens higher than heaven and deeper than hell. I love privacy and I hate nosy people. Okay, I never thought this would get so much attention. I kind of have a minor update which isn't worth its own post. The mombi apologized to me and my girlfriend. Yep, it was half-assed, and yes, her husband made her do it, but I book that as a huge win. So I'm now enjoying privacy on my own balcony. And for the people who suggested passionately hugging each other on our balcony to annoy our neighbor, we're thinking about it. Yep, this sounds like certain HOA and cranky neighbor posts that we've done from time to time here on the channel. This probably could have been avoided if you didn't have such a wealth of seemingly bored people in your immediate apartment complex. Loneliness, spare time, a heat wave, and a teenage son are probably a pretty volatile cocktail to deal with at the best of times. Sounds like the solution has been found. Tell the kid to respect women, tell girlfriend to continue doing whatever she wants in the space of our own home as long as she isn't publicly throwing objects and insults at passers-by. The neighbor woman's misogyny may not have been dealt with, meaning that we might have no choice but to label her the villain of this tale, but there's hope for her if she's surrounded by family and neighbors that have more enlightened and modern perspectives. We can only hope. Might help her social life a little too. Nothing beats scummy landlords during COVID shutdown. I hated my old apartment and needed desperately to get out, and right when I was looking for rentals last year, coronavirus hit and everyone shut down. With less than a week on my lease, I had to jump at the first available home. Didn't even get to inspect it. I ended up with equally horrible property managers. I didn't have a key on day one and I had to break in to move in. They didn't tell me about the German roach infestation and so forth, It's okay, I used to do pest control, so I managed. Right when I lost power during Christmas, also okay, I live in the south and it didn't get too cold, I tracked down the original property owner and asked her if I could get out of the contract and just pay her directly. We investigated many options, and the best way to get out of the contract was just to pay for the last remaining months and write a 30-day notice. They call me and tell me that I have to write them a notice, signed and sent and received on the exact date, 30 days from the lease's end, to be accepted, or I'll lose my $1,000 security deposit. They really stressed it had to be mailed and definitely on time, or they won't be able to accept it. I read my lease all the way through to figure it out and was ready to hand deliver it to them, but they said because of COVID, they won't allow visitors. So I asked if I could just push it through their mail slot on the front door, and they continued to deny me. And that's when it felt fishy. My theory is that while USPS is not working at full capacity, there's a good chance my mail could be delayed, giving them the sweet, easy jackpot. Cue my pettiness. I wrote a template letter with a generic, "This is a number of days till end of lease. Notice. I'm writing to terminate my contract and to receive my security deposit as stated." I sent one out on my 103-day notice. Then another one on my 89-day notice. Then another one on 73 days notice, and so on and so forth. Basically, whenever I remembered about it, I would change the date around, print it, sign it, and then mail it. They called me to say that this was unnecessary, and that they got my message loud and clear. But they sounded pretty rude about it, so I sent them some more. I then received some passive-aggressive emails that they will honor the contract and leave me the $1,000 deposit, as I've sent them a 30-day notice. But they can be tricky, and as I haven't technically sent them an exact 30 days notice, I have some more letters to send. Plus again, they sounded pretty rude over the email. Cue the final 15-day countdown till my 30 days notice letter. I upped the ante. I now have one letter per day to send, and I've changed the fonts on each letter ranging from Papyrus to Jokerman to Comic Sans. My favorite one is the one where it's all bright yellow and barely legible. It hurts just looking at it. Oh, and better yet, I got the last batch sent as certified mail, so I get an email that they received it and that they had to sign it. On my 34th day notice letter, now probably the 20th letter I've mailed, I received my cashier's check back. No message or anything. Fortunately, I have 4 more letters to send. The best $43 on stamps I've ever paid. In short, I spammed the lease office with 30-day notices until they gave up on holding on to my security deposit. I mean, if you've got to be sure, this is a terrific way to do it. Also, you 100% can't trust landlords that are this specific about the ways and means that the conditions of you getting your deposit back are reliant upon. In the grand summary of cases of landlords versus tenants, it's almost always the landlords that go on the jerk pile, although exceptions do exist. This is the reason we take pictures and videos of the apartments we rent, and why we get paperwork for everything. Because if we don't, they'll take literally any excuse to keep it. Look people, maybe you're lucky enough to have good landlords, but too many of us have been wheedled out of our money by owners who seem decent and honest and then pull the rug out from under us at the last second. So yeah, I'm entirely with the author here. If they show even the slightest shifty signs, pull out everything you have and rain the stuff down on them so they have no excuse not to give you your hard-earned cash back. Get in, losers, we're complying maliciously. We all do stupid stuff in our 20s. Well, for me, it was moving into a shoddy apartment with my fellow mental health risk friend. We were both well aware that we may have to break lease at some point, so we found an apartment that was just barely within price range and had the option to break the lease early. It was okay at first. There was linoleum peeling up in the bathroom, and if we didn't wipe down the windowsills, and particularly the far corner ceiling of my bedroom, then we would get mold. But this is Oregon, and as a food stamp family, as I was called in school, I'm familiar with mold, no biggie. Then our washer, which we were paying an extra $100 a month to have in our unit, started leaking. We put in a maintenance request and tack on the peeling linoleum as well, since there'd already be in our unit to fix the washer. They patched up the washer and did a half-assed job repairing the patch of linoleum. A month later, the linoleum, since they'd not actually fixed the underlying problem of the peeling stuff, had come up again. The corner of it actually sliced my foot open, and the bathroom sink, washer, and dishwasher all had problems of one kind or another. They came in again, said that if we wanted them to fix that patch again, it'd cost $450 to replace the whole floor. The patch was like a 2-foot square. So we just never went for that option. 2 months, 3 hospital trips for my ex-roommate, a still broken dishwasher that was unusable, a leaky washer, and a close call later. My roommate has postural tachycardia syndrome and fell down the stairs. We put in a request for accommodation to be released to our respective parents on the grounds of mental and physical disability. They denied the request, simply offering to move us to a downstairs apartment. They don't want to let us out of this lease, even though my roommate had attempted self-deletion twice and almost cracked her head on the stairs? Fine. Malicious compliance incoming. I went through the lease agreements to figure out how much it would cost to break the lease. And I quote, "Fee to break this lease is $1.50, or 1.5 times the rent if this slot is left blank." So someone either messed up the paperwork or figured that no one would read it. So I put in a 30-day notice of intent to move out, with $1.50 worth of quarters in the envelope. The aftermath was they tried to tell us that we couldn't move out because it was meant to be 1.5 times rent and not $1.50. Threatened us with lawyers. I called their bluff and suggested they reread their part of the lease agreement that they signed. I paid my half of the repairs and I haven't heard from them in about 3 months. I'm still keeping all the emails and such in case I get a letter from a lawyer. I still have zero intentions to pay that 1.5 times rent. In short, scummy apartment tried to bully low-income people out of money when they needed to break the lease. They didn't proofread their own lease agreement before signing and got 6 quarters instead of 2.5 grand. Yeah, our rent was $1,625. Welcome to Oregon, where more people are leaving than moving in, but the rent still keeps going up. Well, lucky narrator, the story I do right after I talked about how scummy landlords can be gives us a much more concrete example of just how bad some of them can get. This is, admittedly, a pretty extreme example. I'm not even sure the worst and most exploitative ones would want to keep a clearly mentally ill and at-risk person there against their will, even if that would be mostly motivated by their own self-interest rather than genuine care. The landlords are undoubtedly very cruel and negligent for letting things go this far. Luckily for our author, their negligence actually extended to their attitude to the contract they'd written. Ultimately, I'm sure that the owners probably did the bare minimum to conceal the flaws in the apartment and just re-rented it to some equally desperate people and accepted the loss. More's the shame. Well done on getting out of there. Hope your friend is doing better these days. Entitled mother wants her kid to drink underage and loses it when I say no. Boy, howdy do I have some entitled parent stories from when I worked in upscale restaurants. Diners? Parents behave and kids behave, or try to behave with their parents, encouraging good behavior. Kids get a pass for the odd, poor manner here and there. But the bougier the restaurant, the more entitled the parents get. I had one case where the entitled dad was super angry because we didn't serve burgers, like, "Sir, this is a fancy Italian restaurant." So here I am at a different fancy Italian restaurant. I go up to the table, introduce myself, and asked if I could start them with some drinks. The mother said, "Oh, Kyle, honey, show the lady your ID so we can get some cocktails." A young man, who I would not guess is older than 16, hands me the most blatantly fake ID I've ever seen. Like, I don't know who this thing would fool. The photo was crooked and clearly pasted on, and peeled off when I ran my thumb over it to reveal a totally different person, and the name on the ID was Amanda. So it's a very, very bad fake. I said, "I'm sorry, but do you have another form of ID? This isn't yours." The mother said, "What do you mean that isn't his? That's his ID." Well, I don't think he's a black female named Amanda, so no, this isn't his ID. And I can't serve anyone at the table alcohol now. It's the law. My manager overheard some of this and came over. "Is there a problem?" "She won't serve my son alcohol even though he showed her ID." At this, I handed my manager the fake ID. Ma'am, this is clearly a fake ID. By law, we can't serve anyone at this table alcohol." She lost her crap, jumped up, held a fork like she wanted to stab someone with it, and demanded to speak to the owner. The owner has heard the whole thing. He comes over and informs this woman that no, we won't be serving them alcohol and she can now leave, either via her own legs or with the cops, because we weren't serving them food either. Karen and co. decide that we're serious and they storm out, making a scene, ranting the whole way out the door. Other guests are staring and then go back to their food with a bout of uncomfortable giggles. I have so many other stories from this restaurant, this isn't even the worst one. To answer the questions I'm getting, this happened in a US state with really strict alcohol laws. If one person in the group attempts to obtain alcohol via duplicitous means, such as a fake ID, I can't serve anyone in the group alcohol. Welcome to the US. No booze till you're 21. And no, our bosses weren't always this great about sticking up for us. This was the one case in my career where they actually supported me. If they hadn't, we'd have lost our liquor license. He didn't ever back us up for crap otherwise. Also, if we made more than minimum wage on our tips, we were charged a fee to work there, so we didn't get our full paychecks. This was in the South. They honestly don't care when it's poor people suffering. Honestly, my bosses largely sucked. I hated waiting tables. Well, what a big bowl of jerk salad you found yourself stuck in there, author. I think the audacity of that fake ID is incredible, though. It's impressive to stick by your guns and insist that your 16-year-old son is a black woman called Amanda, so I can nearly commend her on committing to the bit, as it were. And don't scream at the staff who have to follow the law for fear of losing their jobs. Although this lady is clearly a sack of crap, I think your bosses come out worse. Imagine skimming your minimum wage workers' tips if they happen to do an exceptional job and have a lot of satisfied customers for the night. That is not how you retain employees, guys, just in case any of you were wondering. I'm just happy that it seems like the author got out of there in the end. We wish you a life free from exploitative restaurateurs and colorblind, gender-blind, age-blind entitled parents who are willing to get into cutlery fights if you refuse to serve their younger offspring Long Island iced teas. Oh, I can't drive anywhere without permission? Alright, I'll follow that rule, maliciously. This happened when I was 16 years old and I just got my driver's license. My parents had me run to the store to pick up some groceries. I stopped by my friend's house on the way back home for maybe 5 minutes to show him that I got my license and I was out driving alone. It was a really fun moment in the life of a 16-year-old. My stepmom, Mary Ann, freaked out. "We did not give you permission to drive to Bill's house. We told you to go to the store and that's all." I told Mary Ann and my dad that they'd let me drive to Matt's house the day before, so I didn't think it was a big deal. They went all unreasonable and laid down the unbendable rule that set up the malicious compliance. You are not allowed to drive anywhere where we don't give you explicit permission to do so. Period. End of sentence. Just because you were allowed to do it previously does not ever give you permission another time. Ever. Fast forward 3 days later. My 13-year-old stepsister had been a jerk to me all day and I'm sick of her BS. She goes quiet for about 30 minutes and then comes out all sticky sweet. "Hey Brian, it's time to take me to ballet." I've taken her to ballet 3 days a week since I got my license. It's basically one of my chores. But I see my opportunity to say screw you to all 3 of them at once. "Sorry Tina, I'm not allowed to take you to ballet. My parents didn't tell me to take you, and I don't want to get in trouble." She screams, she cries, she begs, and she threatens. She calls her mum and leaves a message. She calls my dad and leaves a message. Just like Steve Miller says, time keeps on slipping into the future. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to hang on to the bitter end and actually go through with it. I'm shaking, but I know that I've got them dead to rights. No call back from the parents, and the clock goes on past the start of her class. My stepmom comes home and Tina runs to meet her. "Tina, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at ballet." I hear Tina tell her rendition of the story, leaving out how awful she's been to me, and they go back and forth. Mary Ann comes pounding down the hall and yells, with God as my witness, "You just wait till your father gets home." I had to stifle a laugh because I never really believed people actually said that. An hour later, Dad came home and the 2 of them go running out to meet him and tell him how horrible I was. I wait in my room for the hammer to fall. About 10 minutes later, my dad calls down the hall, "Brian, would you please come down here and talk to us?" I go into the kitchen. "Well, Brian, you did it." "What do you mean, Dad?" "You got us all, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it." "Okay, let's make this reasonable for everyone." And they did. They agreed that they were over the top. They recognized that Tina wasn't always very nice to me, and they spoke to her about that. I was allowed to have reasonable freedom if I was driving somewhere else, since I had good grades and had never been in trouble. I walked down the hall back to my room, my back to my parents, with the world's biggest grin on my face. Yep, this is a win for you, my friend. They'd set an unreasonable rule during an overreaction, and you called them out in a very effective way. And you were able to stick it to your sibling with complete parental sanction as well, which is a huge plus. It doesn't actually seem like anyone is all that bad in this story, to be honest. Your kid's stepsister is a kid and has her jerky status suspended until she eventually comes of an appropriate age to be judged as an adult. Your dad and stepmom majorly overreacted, but likely more out of protective instincts than anything else. And let's credit them, after some initial anger over your act of malicious compliance, they admitted fault and let you off the hook, and even fairly analyzing that your stepsister had been antagonizing you up to a point, causing you to act on it. It sounds like the conversation was measured and reasonable, and that your act of passive resistance worked out into something that was actually a more healthy environment for everyone. And as a major plus, you get to hear the Hollywood line of, "Just wait until your father comes home." So you can now submit your stepmom's Academy Award nomination. Positive outcomes for all. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Get mad at me when my apple tree doesn't produce enough apples? Oh, get ready to be big mad. In 2018, my husband and I bought my parents' house as our first home. Our very large yard came with 2 mature producing apple trees and 1 crabapple tree. Since my parents moved in 2006, an older gentleman has come by and picked the apples out of their tree to use as deer feed during hunting season. She told me as such and said he usually stopped by late summer to re-get permission for the year and check on the harvest. 2018 and 2019, it was great. He picked the apples on the tree and on the ground in a few hours and away they'd go. 2020 rolls around, our trees produced 1 apple on one and no more than 2 dozen on the other. My next-door neighbors, some good friends, asked to have what was up there to make some pies, so obviously I let them have them. The old dude rolls up in July on his John Deere lawn tractor and asks what happened to all of his apples. When I told him they just didn't produce this year, he went off. Went on about how that's how he makes his fun money in the fall, selling jams and pies at local farmers markets, and it's my fault he lost his income and blah blah blah. When I mentioned I was told he'd used the apples for hunting, he sputtered some more, shook his fist, and drove off. Now look, I honestly wouldn't have cared what he was using them for. I didn't want a cut, even if he was making a profit off them. I still don't care, to be honest. It was his entitlement that rubbed me the wrong way. So this spring, I cut down those fricking apple trees. Sucks to suck, butthole. Oh people, stop complaining, they were always going to come down. This just bumped up my timeline. In their place, I'm putting 2 non-fruit-bearing trees that I'll actually appreciate. Okay, to be fair, after I cut them down, my mum said these trees just kind of cycled like that pretty consistently when I brought up how few apples there were. Every 3 or 4 years, there was just a year where they didn't produce anything. My gosh, so many commenters are very angry about 2 horrible trees. I'm not losing literally anything by not having them. I'm very fine not having extra flares of my chronic pain because I don't want to have to deal with the extra work anymore. If I knew I had so many people wanting to help me with lawn care, tree harvesting, pruning, cleaning up rotten apples, among other things, I would have kept the damn things. Oh, but wait. You don't want to help me with the upkeep, you just want to complain that I didn't. Got it. And I'm planting new trees anyway. I gave the applewood to a family and friends who said it makes great fuel for a smoking barbecue. Then I put it on Facebook Marketplace saying, feel free to grab what you want, and after that the city picked it up to make it into mulch that citizens could pick up for free for their gardens. It all got used in some way. Haha! Take that, you old coot! Look, if you're going to take excess apples to make a profit off your neighbor's goodwill, you've got to either be completely inconspicuous about it and not tell them the moment you get flustered, or preferably, you should just admit it from the get-go. They probably wouldn't have cared, and you could just chuck them an apple pie every now and again to say thanks. Sounds like one heck of an entitled freebooter. And while we're throwing people on the proverbial jerk pile, let's hurl on all the ones who were giving the author crap about what they did with their own property. I'm willing to bet that half of the ones who got angry about her botanical free will don't have gardens to begin with, and don't understand that many such plants come and go when one is dressing the space around their house. When you run a garden where you literally let every plant go through its full life cycle, maybe you can throw a stone from your glass house. Although, I doubt you'll be able to get said stone through the thick tangle of weeds, apples, and overgrown bushes and apple trees, so good luck. Entitled parent stops woman on crutches getting in elevator. This is my first time posting a story like this, so bear with me. I've always wondered if I'd ever see something awful enough to post on here, and this happened a couple of weeks ago. So me, a 20-year-old male, was in Primark at the time, which is a well-known clothing outlet in the UK for people who can't afford to fork out on big clothing brands. I was wandering around the men's section on the second floor, where there's a busy escalator one side of the shop and a lift on the other. As I got closer to the lifts, I heard raised voices and went over to look, because I'm nosy. There was a white woman in her 20s standing in the open lift. She had a child in a pram with her. Let's call her Karen. In the doorway of the lift was an older black woman around 50, who clearly had an issue with her leg and was using crutches and one of those boots they use for stuff like broken legs. Let's call her Jane. With Jane was a younger black man, maybe in his late 20s, but I'm not sure he said anything during the entire encounter. I'm making race relevant because I'm not entirely sure Karen's actions weren't entirely free of prejudice. So Karen was in the lift with her pram angled to stop Jane getting in as well. And the lift was definitely big enough for more than 3 people and a pram. In a raised voice, she was telling Jane, "I'm claustrophobic, I can't have anyone in the lift with me." Jane was asking if Karen could please just let her into the very big lift so that she didn't have to wait for it to go and come back. Karen wasn't having any of it and just kept repeating, "I'm claustrophobic," line over and told Jane to use the escalator instead. Jane gestured towards her leg and crutches and asked whether Karen did this in all lifts because there's no way she could get away with doing that every time someone got into a lift with her. When Jane started calling Karen out on this, Karen's story quickly changed to, "With everything going on, I'm worried about getting COVID," she said, without a mask on, to a woman wearing a mask while stood in an extremely busy shop. By this point, it would have been quicker for them to go down and send the lift back up one at a time. I'd also like to point out that this was the second floor. Even if she'd had claustrophobia, they would have been in the lift together for less than 10 seconds total. Karen started shouting, "How do I know you don't have COVID?" And Jane responds with a very calm, "How do I know you don't have COVID?" So Karen yelled, "How do I know your leg is actually broken?" Weird turn, lady. By this point, there were about 10 people, including me, pretending to look through clothes racks whilst we all stared at what was going on. It's rude to stare, so you have to be polite when watching the drama. Finally, about 3 different staff members appeared, about 5 minutes after the commotion had started. And they asked the women to take 2 separate lift trips. They let Karen go down first because she was already in the lift. Shame. There was a mutual look of everyone around, shaking their heads when the woman with the pram left, and the people talking to the woman in crutches afterwards about how ridiculous the Karen was. I heard Jane saying to the Karen as she left and to the staff members, "This is how it's going to be for a long time. She needs to get used to it." I imagine this was relating to the pandemic and sharing spaces again. I wish something more had been done, but people kick off so much around here that you just kind of want them to get what they want and leave ASAP. Everyone went back to shopping after the women were split up, but I remember making eye contact with a maybe 16-year-old boy who was also watching, and we just burst out laughing in the middle of the shop. So this wasn't all that exciting, but I got a huge laugh out of it for a few days. You know, I didn't expect this to turn into a "screw you for not doing anything" kind of thing. If some of you are confident enough to stand up for someone every time you see something happen, good for you. Well done. But some of us don't have the confidence or social skills to do that constantly. This shouldn't be a "F you for doing nothing" thread. I really do understand where you're coming from, and I do wish I could do things like this, but those of you saying these things need to consider that you have a certain privilege in helping others. Love that you're doing it, or at least saying you'd do it, but as a feminine, trans-mask gay covered in trans rights badges with horrible social skills, I'm putting myself at risk just walking around sometimes. Yes, I should have intervened. Yes, I wish I did. But not everyone has the ability or the safety needed to do this. Yep, this all sounds shifty as heck. If you're not willing to share a lift for mere seconds, but can have a 10-minute argument with everyone in a department store face-to-face, there's absolutely something going on here. I'm going to side with the author against all of their critics. Not everyone can be Batman in every social situation, and I personally would be terrified of white knighting for someone who was more than capable of fighting their own battles, especially in such a public setting. But yeah, worrying about these kinds of things can often stop people who actually need help from getting it, so it might just be a perspective thing. And yes, obviously we can't prove that any of Karen's little stand was innately down to bigotry, but I just don't think I've ever seen anything like this going down in real life due to claustrophobia alone, and it feels like there's something deeper going on here. So the jerkhood is almost certainly on our Karen, if not for racial reasons, then for just being so cray-cray and inconveniencing everyone else, specifically an injured person. When moms go on strike. This happened in 1967 or 68. When I was a baby, my mother was home full-time with me and 3 siblings, under the age of 6. According to my mother, one day my father comes home and is mad because dinner isn't ready and waiting for him. Mom tells him that she's been busy and it'll be ready soon. Dad says he doesn't know why she couldn't do it sooner. And here's his mistake, because it's not like she's been doing anything all day but sitting around babysitting. Oh, you foolish, foolish man. Game on. My mum decides that she'll show him what life is like when she sits around all day, doing nothing. For the next few days, Mum lets the kids run wild. She picks up nothing, doesn't tell the kids to pick up anything themselves, and she doesn't stop the kids from getting into anything. Mum said she just sat around and made sure no one was doing anything dangerous. She didn't clean, do laundry, anything. But dinner was waiting. After several days of a hot mess at home, my father couldn't take it. He apologized and admitted he was wrong. Quite a milestone in our family. Dad was not known for admitting he was wrong or apologizing. Mum 1, Dad 0. I can't imagine any of my brothers acting this way in the modern day. All of them are perfectly capable of cooking and cleaning for their families. I do think times and most families have changed since the 1960s. To be fair, my parents did split a few years after that incident. My dad was very old-fashioned and misogynistic in his thinking. When I graduated college, his first thought was, oh good, now you can get married. So yeah, he was a bit better by the time I graduated law school. At least he congratulated me and said he was proud of me. I still wasn't married, but he knew better than to mention it that time. Clear-cut case of jerkiness on your father's part here, my good author. Sounds like a bumpy road all told, but it seems like at least he was capable of apologizing and learning in some small ways, even if you've implied that he never quite became a model of perfect fatherly behavior. There are other people who never even learned as well as he did, so we can give him the tiniest benefit of the doubt based on his age and generation, even if he wasn't great. Your mother, though, is an absolute champion for sticking to her guns and making a point. And it sounds like you and your brother have all benefited from the example she set. And in case anyone is unclear, looking after your kids isn't babysitting, it's parenting. Don't belittle it. Well done to everyone involved. Strict professor wants me to prove that I'm trying to improve my grades? I'll give her just that then. When I was a freshman in college, I had a maths teacher who was very strict about how she taught, and, more importantly, about how she expected us to learn. For example, she would force students to take notes, and if they didn't, she would make them leave. During our midterm exam, someone asked how much time was left, and she said 5 minutes. Now at this point, I was only about halfway done with the test, so I rushed and finished it barely in time. Me and most other students delivered the test and left the room. When I checked my phone, I realized that there was a whole other 20 minutes left. The students who hadn't finished in time told me that after we left, she realized that she had read the clock wrong and gave them another 20 minutes that me and the others didn't have. I've always been pretty good at math, but obviously, after rushing half the test, I didn't get a good grade. The part I didn't rush was perfect, though. The next class, after showing us our results, she said that we needed to develop a strategy to improve our grades. She said that if we created a plan, stuck to it, and provided evidence of us doing it, she'd give us some extra credit. What she expected us to do was say something like, "I'll practice every week," and submit pictures of us doing it as evidence, or something like that. Now, while I didn't blame her for reading the clock wrong, I did blame the fact that I thought I only had 5 minutes left for not doing well on that last test. I was confident that I could have gotten a perfect grade on it if I had the extra 20 minutes. And so, what I said I would do is bring a watch to the next exam. Was it an arrogant thing to say? Yes. But I also thought it was stupid to follow along with her plan to micromanage our studies. She got mad at me and said that if I didn't do anything else, I'd fail the final for sure. But I assured her that the watch was enough for me to do better. A few months later, on the day of the final, I submitted a picture of a watch on my wrist as my evidence to sticking with the strategy. I got a perfect grade on the final. Since my strategy for improving my grades worked, she had to give me the extra credit, but not before arguing that I didn't deserve it, of course. Yeah, that was unfair for sure, although in fairness it seems like you may have been the case of a student who fell through the cracks of a problem that had worked for literally every other student in this case, rather than her being overwhelmingly complacent and unfair. I am kind of surprised that the post's author didn't even try to launch some kind of appeal if it mattered on something as important as a midterm test. You clearly had other classmates who could testify, and it seems like your teacher was fair or hamstrung enough to give you points on actually fulfilling the criteria of that extra credit. An unusual part of this is that your teacher does seem very dedicated to working with students who aren't doing as well, and actively taking steps to improve their students' grades. Then again, they don't seem very receptive to the idea that they might be wrong. Nonetheless, the teacher is 100% in the wrong for putting you in such a position for failure in the first place. And you have the actual proof in your resulting grades, and the satisfaction of getting extra credit for a mere picture of a wristwatch. Now, match that up with the hours of studying the rest of us had to do for extra credit in our bachelor's degrees, and you have the envy of the narrator, and I'm sure lots of our viewers. Typical jerk neighbors complain about the truck in my yard, so I replace it. I live in a mostly quiet neighborhood with lots of snowbirds and weekenders because of the proximity to a lake. The year-rounders are mostly retired and people generally get along fine. A couple of years ago, however, neighbors on one side built a new garage and a driveway, moving their cars much closer to my existing forsythia hedge. I love the forsythia in the spring and basically let it grow however it likes so I can have the bright yellow flowers. Almost immediately, they started complaining that the hedge blocked their view as they backed out of their driveway. In my state, neighbors have no right to a view extending over someone else's property, and our Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that as long as trees and bushes don't actually impinge onto the roadway, property owners have no obligations to trim for visibility. I keep a 5-foot strip mowed between my hedge and the road, perfectly reasonable to my way of thinking. Since they have no recourse regarding the hedges, they instead complained to county code enforcement about anything else that they could think of. My brother parked his licensed and insured project truck on my property a while back because he was in the process of moving and needed a spot for it while he was figuring things out. In the meantime, he was in a bad accident in another vehicle, and the truck had been sitting for over a year in my driveway. The license plate recently expired, and the moment it did, I got a letter from the county with threats of fines if it wasn't removed. Cue the malicious compliance. My brother decided to sell the truck for scrap and had it towed away this morning. This gave my neighbors their temporary victory as they observed from their deck, and nearly 6 inches of improved view from their driveway. That was at least until I moved my second vehicle, a 1960 Lincoln, which is about 2 feet longer than the truck was, with current plates and insurance, into the place this afternoon. It already needs a ton of bodywork and it doesn't fit in my garage. As a single person with more than one vehicle, I may get around to driving that old car at least once more before winter. Old, bored, retired neighbors who have nothing better to do than complain about everything. They're right up there with HOA members for just seeming to live to make other people unhappy for things that just shouldn't matter to them. The fact that they waited and gathered enough facts to observe when a number plate expired speaks to just how much time and energy they were putting into this. Listeners, if this is you, get a hobby. You could probably learn to paint or knit an entire sweater in the amount of time you spend filling out forms or being on hold on the phone each year instead. Also, excellent passive-aggressive behavior from the author. It would only be improved if you took steps to make your mega vehicle even more of an eyesore. How about a hot pink paint job? Bumper stickers with expletives would probably go down really well with that crowd as well. And while you're at it, why not a pride flag? The kind of people who make these complaints probably love those. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for using some of my stepson's camp savings to buy replacement sneakers for my son? My son Chris's 16th birthday was weeks ago. His mum, my ex-wife, couldn't be with him due to work, but sent him a pair of Adidas sneakers as his birthday gift. Chris is a runner, and he enjoys running every day as a way to relieve stress and anxiety. My stepson Jake, age 17, saw the sneakers and said they looked like the ones his favorite artist, Kane Brown, was wearing in the Famous Friends music video, and so Jake got so hung up on them. He was always asking Chris to see them and try them on. Chris let him see them, but not wear them because Jake has bigger feet and he was worried he might ruin them. Jake wanted to wear the sneakers in front of his friends, but Chris didn't let him leave the house with them. Jake ended up sneaking out with them a couple of times, which made Chris hide them from him since he kept taking them without permission. Jake was no longer able to sneak out wearing the sneakers and begged Chris to let him wear them out one last time at a party his friends had had. Chris said no, and Jake somehow was able to locate the sneakers, but instead of going out with them, he just cut them up with a hand pruner and kept them in his room while Chris and I looked for them until his mum found them. Chris saw the damage and was upset. I grounded Jake and promised Chris to get a replacement pair, but when his mum called to tell me those sneakers were worth $600 and had to be replaced, I was in utter shock. I saw the receipt and even then I couldn't believe it because $600 is way more than I can afford. Chris's mum is a cardiologist and she can afford this stuff, but I obviously can't. I get why she was upset. She worked hard for the money to be able to buy those sneakers for his birthday. She has every right to expect them to be replaced. I was fuming. I let Jake know how much he messed up and told him I'll be replacing the sneakers using the money he had saved for his week-long summer camp. Jake had a meltdown and said he was already punished and it wasn't fair to punish him further. My wife thought I was exaggerating and talked about how important summer camp is for Jake, as he's been waiting for it for months. I let her know that Chris's mum is rightfully upset that her gift to him got ruined, and because Jake acted out of spite and maliciousness, then it's only fair he'd pay for the replacement. I'm not banning him from the camp, but the money I'm taking will cause him to miss it. His cousin's going too, but his parents are paying for the camp cost, so it's different. My wife assured me if Jake knew those sneakers were that expensive, he would have never touched them, but thought Chris wasn't letting him borrow them on purpose. What's done is done, and I made my decision final. Now both my wife and Jake are giving me the silent treatment and refusing to talk about it. My wife thinks it's crazy to spend $600 on new sneakers. I agree, but those aren't mine, so they need replacing. I guess I should acknowledge that because Chris's mum sends somewhat expensive items to Chris sometimes, Jake can sometimes feel jealous, which is understandable, but I make sure to treat both the boys equally by getting them equal stuff with my money. My wife thinks that Chris should be sharing with his brother, and he does, but there are things that just can't be shared. It's not just shoes, because Chris's mum sends expensive items to Chris. My wife thinks that Chris should be generous and share with his brother, which he does. He shares his Xbox and other things, but shoes aren't to be given for any reason, no matter how nice they looked. I think that Jake did have an idea how expensive the sneakers were, since he mentioned that they looked like the ones Kane Brown wore in the music video. Another thing is that Chris's mum is upset over what happened, and she has every right to be. $600 is a lot, and even though I personally wouldn't or couldn't spend that much on sneakers, it's her money that she worked for. So I think it's fair to be expecting a replacement. Even if he didn't know, which probably isn't the case, he should have never under any circumstances deliberately vandalized his brother's stuff. That was his brother's birthday gift. So, am I the jerk? Yeah, this sounds like Jake was the jerk here, with the usual caveat that he's a teenager and most people are at that age. But although some of us, the narrator included, have engaged in petty vandalism of a sibling's property, most of us can't claim to cause $600 worth of damage while doing so. Honestly, I'm amazed that a 17-year-old had that much money of his own to pay for summer camp with. So good on Jake in that respect for being a good little saver. But yeah, given everything his stepdad has said, it seems pretty likely that this was a very deliberate and calculated destruction of something monetarily and emotionally important to his stepbrother. It's really, really brutal to lose that amount of money, especially if he'd presumably been working a fair bit to save it all up, but this is a learning moment right here. Revenge is pointless, expensive, and will only land you in a worse place than you began, and rarely makes you feel better. Especially if the revenge is for not being able to wear sneakers to a party? You're not medically qualified. I work in a prison, and working in a prison means a responsibility to ensure the well-being of inmates. As expected, this includes medical needs. Anything you'd see a doctor for, the inmates would as well. The procedure would be to send a medical kite, or letter, to medical with concerns, symptoms, etc., and a request to be seen. For a true emergency, chest pains, trouble breathing, an inmate can declare a medical emergency. This is the equivalent of calling emergency services. When the medical emergency is requested, a radio call is made with the location, nature of the emergency, and the requested type of service needed, such as facility medical staff, custody staff, and outside medical services. When a medical emergency, or code, is called, the facility is locked down, meaning no movement for the inmates. Lunch being served? Sorry, you'll have to wait while this code is going on. Time for you to go to work? Sorry, you're going to lose some pay until this code is clear. As expected, there are incarcerated individuals that are not all that mentally stable. They'll declare a medical emergency for a stubbed toe or a heartburn. Now, as a regular person, I'm aware a hurt toe is not a medical emergency, so I, and many others, would advise the inmate to kite medical and request to be seen. This system seemed to work for a long time until the administration began to receive complaints from the inmates that staff were ignoring the requests to declare medical emergencies. "You're not medically trained," was the answer we received when we tried to explain the reason for ignoring these, quote, medical emergencies. "Do your job and declare the medical emergencies." Okay. Message received loud and clear. Over the next week, medical emergencies went from 1 a day to 3 to 4 a day. Inmate has a stubbed toe? Medical emergency. Constipated? Medical emergency. Itchy butt? Medical emergency. You get the point. The facility was paralyzed. Medical was mad because they had to respond to every call. Food services were mad because a meal that took an hour to serve was now 2 to 3 hours. The inmates were really mad because their yard and gym time were gone. A week later to the day, an emailed directive was received to stop declaring a medical emergencies and to use our judgment. A few staff members kept it going for another week until it faded out. There was no "sorry for the inconvenience" or "you were right," but the email was so satisfying to receive. Honestly, I would have emailed right back with the previous instructions and outright asked which set of conflicting recent directions you were required to follow, and ask if there'd been a mix-up. Not because it would help anything or because I was genuinely confused, just for the sweet satisfaction of making them admit they were wrong. Admittedly, they will probably do so in the least direct way that they possibly can, but what can the narrator say? He's a petty and vengeful human who enjoys this kind of thing. Keep your receipts, forward them back reminding them they caused the problem, and cackle evilly to yourself and savor the victory. Or, be the bigger person and get on with your life. That doesn't sound nearly as fun though. And yes, some of you are probably fairly pointing out that in the last story I waxed lyrical about revenge being pointless and petty and never coming to any good. But I'm a bad person. I'm just trying to teach the rest of you how to be better than me. Sounds like management fell prey to the classic problem of not trusting the people who were on the ground dealing with the issue, and of course, suffered the consequences. Am I the jerk for what I said after my husband commented on my flat chest? My husband Jared and I have been married for 3 years. He's currently out of work, used to work at a high-paying job, but got kicked out of the company over a fight with a coworker, and I'm the one paying for rent and utilities. We dedicate some time to see his family weekly. They don't know he's unemployed because he thought they'll see him as a failure, especially his mum, so he told me to keep it a secret. I make sure to tell him to look for a job every day, but he keeps stalling, and I've been fed up for a while because I've been carrying the load by myself, while he keeps saying he needs time to prepare for work again after what happened with his coworker. Last night we were sitting eating dinner at the table. His cousin was talking about his fiancée going to Brazil to get a chest job. Jared asked if he was serious, then flattered his future sister-in-law's chests, saying they're perfect, and he didn't understand why she'd get that kind of job done. He then turned to me, stared at my chest while I was eating, like an idiot. I have a flat chest, I'm insecure about it, but I can't do anything about it, obviously, and he said, "Hey, why don't you get one of those? You're the one who needs it the most." His mum gasped and was like, "Jared." I said, "It's fine." I then turned to him and said, "I'll get a chest job once you get an actual job since you've been unemployed for 6 months now." He stared at me in disbelief. His mum began questioning him about his unemployment, and he denied, but then admitted it was true. It got awkward with his mum scolding him and others shaming him for it and for hiding it. He got so overwhelmed he went outside and stayed inside the car until I came out. Although I felt like I went too far for telling his family, it's the truth. Also, he didn't have an argument with his former coworker, but rather a months-long fight. He told me that he thought his coworkers were being unethical, but I got told that he, my husband, violated the coworker's privacy to snoop on him, and it resulted in a fight and him getting kicked out of the company. He started yelling at me in the car, "You couldn't have held your effing tongue," and accused me of turning his family against him and having them judge him, then shun him, and now he can't even step a foot in their house from shame and guilt. I argued that his comment about my chest was insulting, but he said he was only giving me a piece of advice and that there was nothing wrong with him wanting me to look pretty, and that he said what he said out of support and encouragement. But what I did was the complete opposite, and that it was intended to hurt him, and I succeeded. He dropped me off at home and then went to stay with his buddies. I called him later, thinking he had calmed down, but his friend said he didn't want to speak to me and I should give him space. He's acting like I'm the one who messed up and needs to apologize. To be frank, I didn't intend on telling his family about his unemployment, but I felt attacked and didn't know what to do. Yeah, this one has some layers, as it kinda seems like the author and their partner had quite a few bubbling issues under the surface. 6 months of unemployment and a feeling that your partner isn't doing anything to better their situation is likely going to cause some resentment, and almost certainly contributed to the author's outburst. I wouldn't say that their behavior was commendable, but ultimately the husband effed around and subsequently found out. That's a bold move for someone who's been fired for his behavior and is financially dependent on you. When I first read that part of the story, I thought that maybe he'd said it in a jokey spirit, but it turns out that later in the story he completely believes it. What a jerk. And pulling that out at a family dinner kind of worsened the offense too. The things he was fired for also imply that he was probably prone to being pretty lousy in how he treats people in general. While the author probably isn't a jerk, he almost certainly is.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.